Hey there, believers. I got a great episode for you this week. Let me pull this microphone up a little closer. Got a great episode for you this week. Today, I'm bringing on Daniel. You'll recognize the name, maybe, but I know you'll recognize the show that he's been on before. I had Daniel on season 5, episode 19 and 20. It was called Blood Curses and Deliverance, part 1 and 2. And Daniel is the author of The Wrangler. I think it's going to be a 4-part series by the time it's over with. If you're on YouTube right now, you saw the cover of the book. There he goes. I made it about a third of the way through it, maybe halfway through it, and my wife says it's ADD, but I say I just get distracted. But it's a great book. Love it. It pulls you right in. Awesome writing style, different perspectives. I mean, it's super cool. But today, I'm bringing Daniel back on, and he's bringing his brother with him. I really look forward to this. It's not very often I have 2 guests on at once. I'm hoping to do that with another duo in about a month, maybe month and a half or so. Some more people that I think you guys will be interested in. If you have an experience that you would like to share, holler at me. You can get at me at thebumppodcast@gmail.com or text me, send a voicemail, whatever, to the bump phone. It's 304-812-0553. Any other way of getting to me, I'm probably not going to see it. If you send me a message on Instagram or Facebook or something, I very seldom check all that. Most just come through email. Okay, so just send me an email if you have something. I want to hear from you. If it's a testimony, if it's an experience, if it's the unexplained, monsters or paranormal or anything along that line, conspiracy theory, spiritual warfare, of course, I want to hear from you. Yeah, if you feel led to contribute to the show, I don't have any kind of paywalls. I don't make you sign up for a membership for bonus content or anything like that. I just put it out, and I'm going to continue to for as long as I can. If you feel like contributing, it's buymeacoffee.com/thebumppodcast. There is a donate button or something on the website. I haven't messed with that website in a year and a half. It's still up. I'm still paying for it every month because one of these days I'm going to find somebody that can get it the way I want it. But in the meantime, you can go on there and at least hit different links. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead and bring Daniel and his brother, which I neglected to get his name, on the show right now. I knew I'd forget something. If you or someone sings original music, of course, I would like for it to be Christian themed, okay? Or Christian friendly, Christian adjacent at least. But if you were somebody has a song that you would like to put on the outro, as a lot of people have noticed and let me know they noticed, there's 2 very anointed songs that I've played for a couple of years. I removed them from the outro. I just felt like it was time to try something else. I gave a big long description of who it was and all that kind of stuff on a previous episode. So I love it. It always has a place in my heart, but I wanted to open the floor up to maybe helping somebody else get some songs out there and help the show find something new. All right. So that opportunity's there if you want to. Just holler at me about it. Okay. Let's figure it out. If not, then I'll throw some outro music in there. Just something I made up. All right. Okay. Well, here he is. Let's go ahead and bring him on. It's all you.
All right, man. Bo, thanks for having us again. We're for those of you who remember from the last one, my name's Daniel. And man, I had such a good time with you, Bo, in the last one that we had. I just really enjoyed it. and I've done a few podcasts since then. But this is, I don't know, I guess it's like because like the first time you do something and you have an attachment to it, whatever. But
Yeah.
I just really love your podcast. I just felt a real connection with you, and you and I, we've stayed in contact now since then. I mean, we
Oh yeah,
text each
dude.
other periodically and check in on each other and pray for each other, and so
Absolutely.
I feel like we just created a friendship and a bond throughout that. So I just, I'm really excited to be back. So thanks for having us.
Absolutely,
Um,
dude. I
like I
appreciate it,
said,
man.
my
You gave
name's
me
Jordan,
chills, dude.
and then Michael is my older brother. Some of you guys will remember some of the stories I talked about with Mike from the first podcast when it came to the drawing of pictures. Michael was the one who did that. When we talked about the Ouija board, Michael was the one that we did that together as well. When it came to the car crash, Michael was the one who got hit by a semi. We thought it would be a really cool opportunity to be able to sit down and talk with you. That way, if you have questions from the previous time, you could ask them, or if you have questions just from us talking tonight, perfect. So we just, we felt called to do this. And I messaged you in December about planning something and trying to get together, the three of us.
Yeah, it's been a minute. Schedules
Uh,
schedules
yep.
kind of conflict for I stay fairly busy, and like next month it's 6 days a week. I am booked like the entire month. So I thank the Lord that we got the opportunity to get in here when we did. And I wish it could have been sooner, but it's on God's timing, man. But
Absolutely. And
but I
that's a blessing on your end though, with you having that many opportunities to speak with people. That means God's really utilizing you and blessing you. So
thank you,
kudos
brother.
to you, bro. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Um, so I guess we'll just kind of start off with Michael, because this is the first time he's ever done a podcast.
Oh wow,
This is
okay.
to him. But so I just figured, Mike, I figured I'd just ask you, so I told them about the time when we were kids and you drew those pictures. Uh, I know a lot of people, okay, because he's a kid drawing pictures, no big deal. But like I told Bo, when you drew these pictures, man, they were not of a kid. Like what I'm saying is like these are highly detailed, skilled, demonic pictures, that somebody took, time in. It wasn't just like sticky figures and like a little squiggly tree in the background. No, they were so detailed that it scared them off. And so I kind of wanted I give you the opportunity to talk about it a little bit so that way, if Bo has questions he could ask, because I already know about it. But my thought was, I guess where did you get that? Like, what did you draw? What do you think? What do you feel like you drew them for?
To be honest, I don't know. Still to this day, I mean, that incident's a little blurry. I do remember bits and pieces of it. But like you said, like if I were to sit down today and try to recreate what I drew back then, there's no way I could do it. I
Yeah.
mean, I can draw. I'm an artist. I love to draw, but I cannot go back and recreate those images. Um, But at the time, I was so young, I didn't know.
Right.
I didn't realize the seriousness of what I was doing. I was just, I just thought I was doing it until mom. And I remember that day clearly. We came home from school and mom was sitting at the table and she had my notebook. And I remember the first one she opened to. And I want to say the first one she opened to was Satan.
Mm.
I want to say that was the first one because I want to say the second one was actually a picture of God I did. And then the ones after that they were demons. They were demons in different forms, different beauties, different disguises, I guess you would call it. So my mom, I just remember the look of my mom's face, and she was like, "What is this?" And at the time as a kid, I'm like, "It's the devil." And she was like, "Well, why would you draw that?"
Right.
And I didn't have any word because I didn't know. I didn't know why he drew it. I just drew it. That's what the thought process in my head was at that time was, hey, draw this, and this is what it's going to look like.
What did it look like?
It looked like a masterpiece. It looked like sun. And I'm not saying that just to say that. It looked like something for the age I was probably what?
Well, it's like I told my, I think that I want to say probably like we were probably second, third, fourth grade
Yeah.
around that age.
I was young. So I mean what the work that I did looked like it came from somebody probably in college
So what?
who'd been doing art for, years and years and years and perfected the craft. That's what
Yeah.
it looked like I said, like if I were to go back and try to weave and recreate anything of that subject, I couldn't do it because I don't have the recollection of how I did it. It was just something that came into my head, and I put it down on a piece of paper. And the one time in my life that I was able to do that I've never been able to do again.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I got a lot of my artistic abilities to a certain extent. But other than that, though, a kid in second grade drawing something like that is not normal
Right.
by,
Right. Yeah.
by any means at all. So coming from my mom's perspective and seeing the look of my mom's face and knowing, hey, this isn't right, like I messed up. And then my mom was like, we're gonna take these and we're gonna go out to the desert because we lived in the middle of the desert. She said, we're gonna go out to the desert. She said, and we're gonna light these on fire and we're gonna pray.
Wow.
She said, we're just gonna pray. She said, every picture, she said, we're gonna burn and we're gonna pray. And as a kid, I was like, okay,
Right.
yeah. We went out there and my mom burned them and we prayed over it. And then I remember my parents, my parents finally were like, we're going to go to the four corners of the house. We're going to start blessing the four corners of this property. We're going to bless this house. We're going to try to do everything we can to keep this demonic nature, from penetrating what we believe in our house.
Hmm.
Did it work? I mean, it worked for a little bit of time. Yeah, it did.
Right.
But,
Yeah.
just there's something that I think about it all the time. Like I said, and a lot of it's blurry. A lot of it I can't really tell you details of. I can tell you details of just the bits and pieces that I can remember.
Right.
And I don't think it was a possession. I don't think it was a full-on possession by any means, because I don't think you can possess a child of God like that.
Right.
Now, I should maybe, starting to see what they can play with or what they could get away with. What can we do to this child? The child's innocent.
Right. Yeah.
What a better person to attack than, somebody innocent and young. And they did. I mean, they did it.
And another thing is too, Bo, when they went to the desert to burn those pictures, it worried my mom so much that they didn't let me go. Like I had to stay at the house. And I can't. Did Dad go with you?
No, it was just
and
me.
that's what I thought. I thought Dad stayed with me, and my mom took him out to the desert. So whatever the skill set of it and just I would say the graphicness of them were so intense that my mom was terrified. Like, I mean, you come home and your mom's sitting at the table waiting for you with the notebook open. Something's wrong.
Yeah.
And another thing is too, I think it's important to point out is what we talked about before in the other podcast is, we come from a Christian home.
Right.
Our dad's a pastor. Our dad's he was a church planner for 30 plus years. He's been in the ministry now for he's 65. He started when he was 18. So what is that?
Forever.
45, 46 years he's been in the ministry. Yeah. So we grew up in the church. We knew about God. We went to church all the time. And but those pictures were so intense that here's the thing I think that people need to realize too is Michael knew the extent of what he was drawing to the point where he hid it. Like he didn't have these pictures out in the open on his bed, just laid out for anybody to come see. No, my mom came in his room because at that time it was just the two of us. We didn't have our other siblings, so we each had our own bedroom. His was the one closest to the living room. Mine was down the hallway. Mine was down the hallway. And so usually, one of the days during the week, our mom didn't work. So she would, as a stay-at-home mom, she would clean our room sometimes. And that's what the whole thing was. She was cleaning, organizes his little bookshelf that he had. And I don't know if like it fell out and she picked it up and what's this, or if she was going, I don't know how she found it. We never asked, but man, she did.
I don't even know where I put it, honestly. I just remember it wasn't out in the open by any means. It's
No.
not something I kept out in the open. It was something that, when I was in my room alone, that's when I would doodle my time.
Right.
And then if I ever got done, I would put it up and put it away. Because that's was the whole point. I didn't want anybody else to find it. It wasn't for anybody else to find. Really.
Right.
If you think about it, that was just for me. Those were mine. Those were what I created.
Right. And we're so close. I mean, when we were kids, everybody thought we were twins. Just because our habits, the way that we acted, and how just the bond. I mean, just the stuff we went through in our lives, that we're very close to this day. And he didn't even show me those pictures. Obviously, I knew that he drew them, because when my mom asked who drew these, I was like, Michael did. I mean, I knew he drew them, but because he would tell me, he's drawn or whatever, but I never saw them not until that day.
Nothing I showed,
Yeah.
And I mean, to certain extents, I mean, as a kid, I mean, there's a part of me that did want to show, because I wanted to be like, oh man, look what I did. Like, this was cool. But you didn't.
Right.
It's like, well, I can't show my mom this, because my mom's like, well, why are you drawing that kind of stuff anyway? Like, we don't, that's not stuff that we watch or we do in the house. Like, we didn't even celebrate Halloween growing up, really. My parents were so strictly against stuff like that, because
Right.
they want to open the door to any kind of demonic nature or anything to be brought into a house, which that's understandable. I understand that. But that's kind of, coming from the background that we grew up in. So, like, yeah, for me, that was like my personal space, man. That was my own. But my mom did find it, and I just never forget the look on her face.
Yeah,
and
man.
It was just a pure like terror, like, we've got to do something now.
Yeah, well, I mean that wouldn't be from the mind of a 7 or 8 year old kid, especially if you're kind of kept away from that, and then for that to still come through. Did you do you remember what the devil looked like in your drawing? Was he red with big horns, or was he like this aristocrat or whatever? Or
so the way it depicted to me, was he was, in a sense, he was beautiful but ugly, if you know what I mean. Like, he had the characteristics of being this beautiful being, but it's like his face wasn't right. Like, you could tell the demonic and the evil in it, even though it looked so beautiful. Like, it was deceitful. That's what it was. It was deceitful. Made you look like, oh man, that's fantastic. But in reality, it was just like, no, just keep looking at it. It just sucks you in,
Yeah,
so
that's pretty deep for somebody at that age, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
you hear about people think the devil looks like this red guy with horns and this, pit. The devil, he doesn't look anything like that, really. I mean, he looks like this beautiful creature, but you can tell just the evilness that comes off of this guy. It's and you hear about people that have these dreams that have seen the devil, and a lot of them like, I don't want to talk about it. That's what it is. It's not something you want to sit there and talk about.
Yeah,
it's just, but it's something that has stayed stuck in my brain for all these years. And it doesn't matter how hard I try to just get it out. It's just something and I think God does that on a purpose. Because he can be like, look, this is what was going on in your life at one point.
Right.
But you focused on me, you depended on me, and this is where I took you from, and this is where I put you now. We're in a whole different place.
Amen.
So, I mean, it's a life lesson that you learn. And for a kid, I don't wish that upon nobody. I really don't.
Right.
But I think it's taught me a lot in life. Honestly, though,
Absolutely.
So,
no doubt, man.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably one of the biggest firsthand experiences that I had. That kind of really shook me. Man,
Yeah, we like just like he said, our parents blessed the house. They did the praying over the four corners of the
I think
foundation.
they anointed
Yeah,
the doors.
anointed the doors
Yeah.
and anointed the frame, the door frame, just like even in the days of Moses when they put the blood up there. We did the anointing oil there. We even got, because we would experience so much stuff in just me and Michael, or in our room. Because at that time, I don't know if you guys remember, but I told you that once we adopted the four little ones, they moved us into the garage.
Right.
And we had that room to ourselves that led outside. And actually, Michael has a story to kind of play into that for you. But in that room, Mike and I would experience so much stuff in there. I don't know if it's because we were kind of secluded from the family. Not like our parents were like, "Hey, we don't want." No, it wasn't that. It was great for us. We loved it. We loved having the garage as a room. I mean, what kids could say, "Hey, my room's a garage."
It was
Right.
huge.
It was huge. We loved it. We absolutely loved it. But we were, you had to go through, because we were in the second garage. You had to go through the big garage to even get to the house. So we were technically secluded, and the devil just he really did buckle down on that. And
I think he did a lot because I remember a lot of the times like he would take the dog outside to go to the bathroom and he would come in and he would be just terrified. And I'd be like, man, what's wrong with you? And he said, man, we were outside in the backyard and the dog just kept barking over at the neighbor's house. He said, just kept barking and barking. And he said, and I didn't know why. He said, and then I happened to look over there, Mike. He said, I promise you, he said, there was a figure, a white figure standing on the side of the house watching us.
Hmm.
And I was like, what? So I jumped out of bed, because we had a window and we had the door. So I could either look out the window or open the door and I could see the neighbor's house. So, of course, I opened the door and I didn't see nothing. And he
Right.
was like, the bathroom window over there, he said it was standing right underneath it. And the whole time we were out there, Mike, he said it was just watching us. Didn't move, just watched us. And I was like, man, So of course I didn't see it and I jumped back in bed, but I just remember it was like little things like that. And it wasn't all the time, but it was just like just so often
but
that it had to show itself like, hey, I'm still here just to let you know.
and see it, and actually, I love doing this together because I didn't tell you that story.
No.
But the thing about it is, as soon as you say that, I remember that because I had pebbles.
Yeah.
And I do remember that white figure standing underneath the door or underneath that window, but it wasn't our house. It was the neighbor's house.
Right.
And so where we were at, I told you, our bedroom door led outside into the desert, which is beautiful. But I don't care what anybody says. The desert at night is dark. There is something evil about the desert at night. But
well, it all depends because we lived on an Indian reservation.
we did. We lived on
so the land that we were basically
was
we
tribal.
grew up on was tribal land.
Yep.
So I mean, you hear the myths or the legends or whatever you want to call them about tribal land.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And, I mean, I think it does have a little bit of an eerier a feel to it at night.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess that's because you kind of go back on what you've learned about Native Americans and the history of the Native Americans on the land, the burial grounds. And,
it was not a Navajo land. And the thing about it too is that stuff's real, man.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, that stuff's real. And it's just like, when you talk about when you breathe life into something, you talk about it, you give it power. That's just like Navajo legends. You talk about the legends and you learn about them as kids in school, and then you see it and it's real and it becomes real because it's real. But that night I remember seeing that, and I went and I got him and I told him, and that's the thing that's trippy about it is I saw it, my dog saw it, he didn't. Yeah. But there's another thing is, I remember I told you I don't like mirrors. We used to have a mirror in our bedroom. And you may not remember this, but me talking about may trigger it for you. Because I will tell you, a lot of times when we go through stuff, we kind of suppress it. We push it down. We don't want to remember it. And he'll remember things I don't remember until we talk about it. And I was like, dude, I do remember that. And we'll stay up all night talking about stuff. It just ding, hey, you remember this? You remember that? But we used to have this mirror. And the way that our bedroom was set up was as soon as you walk in through the door, the door that led into the bedroom, Michael's closet, our parents went and they bought these specialized closets. where you could put them together, and they were both white, and you open them up, kind of like a wardrobe, kind of, but they had drawers on the side, and you could hang up clothes on this side, and on this side it had shelving and stuff like that. Well, when you walk into the bedroom, and Michael's was right to the right, and past his was his bunk bed that he slept on, and he always slept on the top bunk. And then we had the futon, and then I've been this tall since I was 12, 13.
Yeah.
So
long time.
yeah, so at that time, my dad and my mom, they got me an elongated twin size bed to where my feet didn't dangle off as bad. So that's where my bed was. So I didn't sleep on the futon. But when you walk in, my closet was right here, and on the other side of my closet was like a space between the wall, or the side of the closet, and then the wall, and we had a mirror that was right there. And I don't know, it's probably, I don't know what, 6x6. I mean, it wasn't big.
Oh, yeah.
It was a little small mirror
It
that
was a small one.
but we would use to brush our hair in the morning, back when I had hair or whatever. And then we had that right next to it was the bedroom door, or the door that led to the desert. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll never forget this. I came home, or I went into the room, and that mirror was busted. Glass on the ground, and Michael was sitting on the futon like this, just like this, just kind of rocking. Just, I don't know, because it was this, we were older, we were teenagers. He was probably 15, 14, 15. I was probably 13, 14. We were both doing sports at that time. So I don't remember if he was playing baseball and I was doing basketball, because we weren't on the same schedule.
No.
But he was home before me. I got home, and I remember walking to like I said, walking to the bedroom. There's the glass on the ground, and I looked, and Mike's sitting there like that, kind of like, a little off. And I'm like, dude, what's wrong? And I looked down. I was like, dude, what happened to the mirror? He's like, I punched it. And I was like, why? He's like, I got tired of them looking at me. And so, like, whatever it was, something kept looking at him in the mirror, and he punched it. And to that day, he's like, I don't want mirrors in our room. And we never had a mirror again. And so I'm the same way. I don't like mirrors, but because we've seen things in them, or experienced things with them. But I'll never forget that. And so, like, to this day, I don't have a mirror in my room. Even when we go into the bathroom or whatever to brush our teeth, I hate brushing my. Actually, this is true, and it's funny. I brush my teeth when I take a shower,
Really?
because I ain't looking in the mirror. I don't like the mirror. And so, yeah, but I'll never forget that. And Mike just sitting there like rocking back and forth, and whatever you saw spooked you enough to where you punched that mirror and it was done.
I mean, I'm the same way to this day. Like I have, well, the wife has mirrors in the room, of course, so she can get ready and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just not a mirror fan. Like I'll never look at myself, direct eye contact in the mirror. I mean, I'll just look to make sure my clothes are okay, and I usually get out. But mirrors, I've seen, when you look at a mirror and what's looking back at you isn't you.
Mm-hmm. I was about to say that.
That's when you really start to think, like, what is that?
Yeah.
Like,
Like,
so you ever looked in the mirror and it's smiling back at you, but you ain't smiling?
No, not that I know of. I did have an incident with a mirror one time, but it's not a bragging story. I was living far from the Lord, but we had went out, my wife and I, and we went to we went and hung out in the backyard with some friends, man, at their house. And I drank a fifth of whiskey. I was a bad drunk back then, and I come home, and I barely remember this, but when my wife came into the bathroom to check on me, I was staring into the mirror and I was crying. And I remember it. She makes fun of me still yet about it, but I didn't find it funny, but I still don't find it funny. But I was staring in the mirror and crying, and she's like, "What's the matter with you?" And I looked at her and I just said, I'm not crazy. I don't know what I was doing, but a lot of times I didn't see who I am in my eyes. You know what I mean? Back then, I didn't literally see a different figure, but I could tell that there was like not good Bo looking back at me. You know what I mean? But yeah,
That's that's kind of how I kind of got to the point after. It's just like, when I look in there, it's like, I don't like who that is or what that is.
yeah, man.
So I just stayed away from it. And I to this day, I do. Like, you go to these the mirror mazes and stuff,
No,
I will never do.
Nope.
That's terrifying. It's funny, like, I'll laugh about it, and then my wife laughs about it too, and we make jokes, but I'm like, no, at the end of the day, like, I couldn't do it. Like, it was really terrifying.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I don't mean to
know-
laugh. It was just Daniel's reaction. He's like, nope,
No, we
joke about it all the time. We always say, well, we're gonna do something, what we're terrified of, and then we sit down and really think about it.
No,
Like, yeah, no, we're good, man.
we came to it one time to where we went to a carnival type thing, and they had one of those.
Yeah.
And there's a clown at the front, and me and Mike looked at each other like, nope, we out. We're not doing that.
no, man.
So we never did, but and it gets to the point too also that our mom, I mean our dad too, my mom was, I would say she was more in the know, put it that way. She knew, I mean, she knew that there was a darkness that followed us.
Yeah, man.
And she used to do that too. She would pull Michael, especially because when we were kids, we still, not nearly as we do now. I mean, when we were kids, but when we were kids, he had a real bad temper.
Yeah.
Like he would get to the point where he would go crazy, and she would have to hold him like this, so he couldn't hurt her or himself or me or whoever, whatever. And she would hold him in front of the mirror, and she'd be like, "Who is this? Who is this? This isn't my son."
One of the things is she'd be like, look in the mirror. She goes, "That's not my son. That's not my son." And I think that's kind of what a lot of it went back to, is because I would look, and it wasn't me.
Yeah,
right.
That was not me. That was something else that was trying to take a hold of me, and I guess that's what kind of scared me, because I realized it.
Yeah,
I started to finally realize it. Like, okay, I understand what you're saying. Like that isn't me.
yeah. Mom had discernment.
Yeah, mom definitely.
Yes.
And actually,
yeah.
speaking of that, I'm gonna tell a story. You'll remember this. I know you will. So Michael's a severe asthmatic.
Mhm.
And he's always been. I mean, even when we were kids and we had a share room, he was so bad, bro, that I used to fall asleep to his asthma treatments. That was soothing to me because I knew Michael was there. And so, he used to have those quite a bit. I mean, there was many nights he would stay in the hospital because he was so bad. My mom would have to stay with him. But I mean, when we were teenagers, we were rebellious. We got in trouble a lot. We actually got kicked out of the house, or quote, ran away when we were sophomore, freshman.
Yeah.
And we stayed with one of our friends. His name is Omero. We went and stayed with him for probably like a week and a half, 2 weeks almost. Maybe not that long, but it felt like it. It's probably a week, to be real.
Yeah, because I think mom and dad showed up.
Yeah, mom and dad showed up
night.
late one night and took us home. Okay.
Yeah.
And so we were just bad. We were fighting with them. They were fighting with us. It was 2-on-2 always. If they went at Michael, I always jumped in. Michael really didn't jump in too much because I was more the aggressor. But whenever they, argued with Michael, I was always there. We were in the garage. It was the night that they brought us home. He was having trouble breathing. And we knew that they had inhalers in the back closet in the house for him. And so Michael came and I was in my room. We were in our room, and he came up to me. He's like, "Hey, I'm having trouble breathing." He's like, "Will you go in the house with me so I can get an inhaler?" We knew that our mom would be awake. I think it was probably a Friday or Saturday night.
Yeah, and it was late.
It was late.
It was probably about 10, 11 o'clock at night. And my mom would stay up, and she would either watch some TV or she would, read a book. Or Dad was always in bed early.
Yeah,
9
always.
o'clock. He was always in bed.
Always. And she would stay up till 1 o'clock sometimes.
Yeah.
So we knew she'd be awake. And Mike's like, will you, go with me? Because if mom says something to him, she knew that I would, jump in. And so I was like, sure, whatever. So we go into the house. Sure enough, We walk around into the kitchen because you walk through the garage door, it leads right into the kitchen. And then it goes right into the dining room. And then obviously it's the living room to the side. And my mom was sitting on the couch and she could see directly into the living room or into the dining room with the angle she was sitting. And she was watching TV that night. And she looks at us, doesn't say a word. Doesn't say one word, but she looks at us. And she watches us walk into the dining room, into the living room, and walk down the hallway into the closet. Here's where it got weird. We get to the closet, we open the closet, we get him an inhaler, and we start walking to the end of the hallway. And my mom gets to the end of that hallway quick. And she gets to the end of the hallway and she stops and she blocks our way. And she's standing here, Michael, and actually this is kind of funny because how we're sitting is how we were standing. He was here and I was here. And she was sitting and she was in front of us and she blocks us. And I kid you not when I tell you this. She looks at us,
I remember, yeah.
but she's not looking at us. She's looking past us. And she's like, she's looking behind us. And she's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And me and Michael look at each other and we're like, what? She's like, what are you doing? And Mike's like, I got an inhaler. I can't breathe. And she's like, and I kid you not, bro, she puts her hand on Michael. She puts her hand on me and she starts praying. And Mike and I look at each other like, what? What's going on? And she's praying. And of course, we could hear her. We could understand what she's saying. But she's praying a protective prayer over us.
Amen.
Because she sees something behind us.
Mm.
And when she's praying over us and she's holding on to us, we felt something else touch us. And I kid you, we stood in the end of that hallway probably 10 minutes. And my mom is having a spiritual warfare right then and there, praying over her two boys because she sees a demonic entity behind us, guiding us, walking us.
My mom,
and
she was battling demons that night.
She was battling demons that night.
We
she
didn't
saw
know
it.
We didn't know it at that young of an age, but she was on a straight battle with demons.
Because, and that's the thing is, that's how we know. Because later in life, we asked her about it, and we're like, "Mom, do you remember that?" And she's like, "Yep." And like, what? She's like, I saw something walking with you. She said there was something with you guys that night, and I was fighting them. I was telling them, "You cannot have my sons." And so we were, and I mean, it spooked us. It spooked us.
Oh, I took off. I remember I went straight back to bed. I got in bed. I didn't say nothing the rest of the night. And I remember I covered myself up underneath the covers and I went to bed. And I didn't know what to think,
And the next morning, we didn't say nothing. We didn't ask her about it. We didn't talk about it. We didn't bring it up. And you know what's crazy though, Bo? Is after that night, we were good.
Yeah.
We stopped fighting as a family. We had breakfast as a family. We sat around the table. We apologized to our parents. They apologized to us. Because I mean, we love our parents, but our parents weren't perfect. They'll tell you that. They know they made some mistakes in that time frame. We made mistakes. We were bad kids. You ask my mom, who was the worst one to raise, she'll tell you me straight up. And then she'll tell you Mike was right there too. But that, whatever that, and I know what it was. I know it was. We talk about it. But she saw something. I don't know if she saw like the full form of him or the full graphic of him, but she saw a figure. She saw something up that she's like, hey, I'm praying for my boys.
Yeah, man.
And
she went to war.
She did. She went to war. And she does still to this day. So does my dad. Our dad prays for us every single day. And we know even with the stuff that we go through and the stuff that we face now, imagine where we would be without the prayer of our parents,
right?
People, the protection that they put on us and stuff. But kind of could keep the flow going. When we were in our room, this one's going to throw you a little curveball. I think you're going to really like this one actually, because Michael asked me about it. He said, does Bo believe in this? I was like, actually, he does. He does believe that this is real.
Oh yeah.
And I think it plays into the part with the desert, right? That goes out to a room.
So there's two incidences. So
real quick though, not to cut you off, I personally never experienced this. This is all Michael. He,
You didn't know
I
about
didn't
it.
know. Yeah, I didn't know about this until 2 years ago. My mom told me, and I was sitting at the table. And I was like, Mom, I was like, what? And she's like, yeah, no, your brother told. Because remember, I told you my mom called me one day and apologized, and she said, Dan, I never really believed your stories until I started listening to Bo and the confessionals and all that stuff. And she apologized. And Michael was living with me at the time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
man.
Mike had just moved back home with his wife, and my mom told me, and I was like, what? And I actually had to call him and ask him. Not saying I didn't believe it, but I didn't know it was real or
Right.
that he experienced this. But going back with Navajo legends, uh, Goatman.
All right. Let's go.
So I'll let Michael's actually seen him a couple times. And I'll let him tell you about it. And I don't ask me. I don't know nothing. I never seen it. Couldn't tell you. But
What's
he
up, man?
So I've experienced it twice in my life. And so when we first moved out to Big River, the youth group, my mom and dad were my dad was pastoring and my mom and dad would both, do the youth group. The youth group would tell my parents, well, we live on Native American land, you know the legends, Goatman. So they would tell us all about the Goatman. My mom would laugh, that's not true. And they're like, no, we're telling you he likes to ride the train. Well, where our house is, there's our house, and then we have like it's just desert, right? Desert, and then there's a road that goes through, and then there's a little bit more desert and the train tracks. So I would say probably good, 2 football fields from our house, there was a train tracks. So then they always said, hey, he likes to ride the tracks, and he gets off anywhere. Doesn't matter where, usually he'll get off at night sometimes. So I was like, what?
well, just to interrupt you real quick. We heard so many legends growing up.
Oh, I'm sure.
People
Yeah.
used to tell stories. Our best friends used to tell us stories. And so, growing up as kids, we believed in the supernatural. Don't get me wrong, we believed in demons and all that stuff. We've seen that.
I didn't believe it.
We didn't believe in Goatman. We
Nah.
used to laugh about it, used to, joke about it. So it wasn't like we were looking for it, you know what I'm saying? Or he was looking for it. We just didn't believe in it.
So my parents had bought me and Dan 4-wheelers one year for Christmas. And I used to love just to get on it and I'd go ride. I'd go out in the desert and I'd ride, ride for a couple hours and come home. And I just explored. Well, I want to say it was a weekend. It was a Saturday. And I asked Dan, I said, hey, you want to go out and ride with me today? And he's like, nah, I'm going to stay home. And I think you want to play some video games or something.
Probably, yeah. Or basketball.
And I said, that's cool, man. I'm going to go out. So I told him. So I said, I'm going to follow the tracks. And if you follow the tracks, you remember if you went, what was it, west, it would take you all the way out to where Stephen lived.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you went the opposite way, it took you into Big River.
Mm-hmm.
So I said I was going to go out towards Stevens. So what I would do is I would leave the house, I would follow the trail out to the tracks, and then on both sides of the tracks, depending on which way you wanted to go, you could ride trails on, just follow the tracks all the way through.
Nice.
So I was like, well, I'll go under the tracks and I'll get on the other side and I'll just follow the tracks a little way, just see what's going on there. So I did. And I was in the middle of nowhere. I would say I was a good couple miles from home, good couple miles from anything, really. Just me out in the middle of the desert. Well, as I'm riding the tracks up ahead, I see this. I didn't know what it was at first, to be honest with you. I see this thing go up and he runs up underneath the tracks. And I'm like, what is this? I'm the only one out here. Sometimes you'll see wild donkeys. I mean, you'll run a bunch of them sometimes, but other than that, maybe a coyote here and there, but nothing really. So I'm like, well, shoot, man, I'm going to check it out. So, young teenager, So I'm like, all right. So I follow the tracks a little ways, and then I come down, and I see where I can go under the tracks. So I go under the tracks, and I follow what we call a wash. Mm-hmm. And I'm following it down a little ways, and I'm looking around, and I don't see anything. And I'm like, what the heck, dude? I saw something run this way. I'm like, I know I did, and it was big. It wasn't something tiny.
Yeah.
Oh, looked around for a little bit, and I was like, well, I'm going to go back the way I came and just keep going. I tell you what, when I had turned around to go back under the tracks, I had this weird feeling like somebody was watching me. And I just happened to look up on the embankment right there, and it was Goatman. It was this creature that was half of a goat and half of a man. And he was, when I tell you, like, this thing was evil, it was evil.
Yeah.
And he watched me. So I was like, I got scared. So I was like, I'm going back home. I'm not going to keep going. I'm going back home. So I took off underneath the tracks and I got back up on the other side. And then sure enough, he started to follow me. But I'm like, I'm on a four-wheeler. There's no way a two-legged man or whatever he is can, catch me.
Right.
So I hauled it, man. I hauled it as fast as that thing would take me home. And he took off somewhere else. I don't know where he went, but he wasn't behind me when I got closer to home.
Right.
So I don't know what happened to him, if he just disappeared. So I went home and I told my mom. The only person I ever told was my mom. But at the time my mom was in that sense where no, it's not real. You didn't see him. Like, no, it's all make believe. And I was like, no, I'm telling you what I saw. Like, don't make this up. And I wasn't one to tell stories like that. I didn't kid around. If I told my mom something like that, it was because I actually saw this.
Yeah. Can you describe him, man? Because what's crazy? A week ago, I have a little niece. She's like 7 years old. She asked me if the Goatman was real. I don't know what brought it up. She was playing around with the tablet and she was like, "Is the Goatman real?" And West Virginia, we're full of cryptids around here, man. So I was like, yeah, and so is this and this and this, But it's just weird that I haven't heard anybody talk about the Goatman, like, I don't know, almost ever. But here he is. It's weird. But can you describe what he looked like?
And real quick though, Bill, where do you live?
West Virginia.
West Virginia. This is in Southern California.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing, because we don't really have a lot of cryptids out in Southern California.
Right.
We have legends like skinwalkers and all that stuff, but that's crazy, to think about. Goatman in Cali, but
You ever seen the movie The Chronicles of Narnia?
Yeah, man.
Okay, Mr. Tumnus, the fawn?
Yeah.
Okay, picture something like that, but with the
was he bigger or smaller?
No, he was big. I would say I'm 5'7", 5'8". I'd say he was probably about 6 foot. Right?
Yeah.
He looked like Mr. Thomas, but his face was like a demonic. He did have horns, he had the legs that looked like a goat or sheep with the hooves on it. His hands though weren't really hands. They were more like a hoof hand looking thing,
Yeah.
That time I didn't get a real good. I seen him, I looked at him, he looked at me, we made eye contact, and I knew I didn't need to be there no more.
Yeah, it was planning.
The second time I witnessed him, and this is what really kind of scared me more than the first time. I was sleeping in my bed one night, and we used to have a motion detector that was outside in the garage, and anything that triggered it would come on, right? It would come on, it would be right there in the driveway. I could look out my window in my bedroom, and I could see the driveway. I could see the cars, I could see everything. Well, the light kept flicking on and off. Everybody was in bed. Okay. And mind you, I'm the room closest to the front door, closest to the living room. Like, everybody else is behind me. So if somebody's coming in, they're getting me first.
Right.
It always scared me as a kid. Well, it kept going off and coming off. And I was like, well, maybe it's the donkeys. Because wild donkeys would come around. They would hang out every now and then. So I'm like, maybe it's the wild donkeys. So I got up, and I remember my blinds were closed, and I didn't open my blinds, but I peeked between two blinds to see what it was. And when I tell you I saw a Goatman standing in my front yard, he was standing in my front yard. Or how did he know that was my front yard? I don't know, but He was.
So was this after you original seen him?
It was after the one I seen him on the 4-wheeler.
There you
But
go.
I told you when I got closer to home that day, he was never behind me.
Mm-hmm.
But this was later on, and then I caught him. I caught him in the front yard, and he wasn't there for a long period of time. I guess he can sense somebody could sense he was there or knew he was there, and then he kind of took off. He went towards like the neighbor's house.
Wow.
But it was crazy because when I looked out of my window and I seen this figure, and I'm just not something that like it's not like the Chronicles of Narnia where he's a friendly being, you know, you want to go out and hug him and stuff.
Right.
No, like you seen this dude and you're like, okay. So I jumped back in bed and covered myself up and I prayed and I hoped to God that he went away and I could go to sleep, you know.
No doubt.
And I told my mom again and the same thing. My mom was kind of like, yeah, you didn't see the Goatman. Like the Goatman's not. I'm like, I'm telling you, the Goatman is real.
So at that time frame too, our parents were, I mean, they were younger, obviously.
Yeah.
They did youth group, and a lot of times they would do youth group at our house. And so they were used to the teenage kids telling stories and legends, and of course, you know, then of course Michael tells them. And so my mom told me about it. She said, you know, your brother's seen Goatman, because we were talking one night, me and mom, about legends and stuff, and that came up, and she's like, you know, your brother saw him before, and I was like, what? She's like,
It's
yeah.
only been 2 times in my life. And like I said, they weren't long periods. They were just brief encounters. But, you know, I've heard stories, like I said, as kids, and I hear stories now of people running into them or seeing them or whatever the case may be. But to actually be in the presence of something like that is way different than what you could imagine, you know? Just the fear that just strikes you is unbelievable. Because my first reaction was like, hey man, it's time to go home. Like I need to go home, not to a friend's house, but home.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, it's like you're looking at a demonic entity that's manifested into the natural world. That's of course that's going to be terrifying. 2 accounts is plenty. One is more than enough. You know what I mean?
You're actually making eye contact with this being, and he knows you are there and sees you, and you see him. I mean, it's like, you know, there's nothing that I can ever that I've been through or I can even imagine that can even compare to like the fear that you fear, you know. It's unbelievably crazy.
No, I can't, bro.
Well, I mean, it's different
Yeah.
because you go through different things, but you know,
let me ask you guys, man. For both of you guys to have these kind of things, like attachments and hitchhikers and all this, why do you think that you two are being targeted or have been targeted or still sometimes targeted? Is it because of the faith in your family that you guys you're strong spiritually? Because I know, like my pastor says, higher levels, higher devils. You know what I mean? It's like, Mike, you told me off air you've had like 4 surgeries on your vocal cords. You were diagnosed with extreme asthma. You've been in this horrific car wreck. You know what I mean? You've been stalked by a goat man. It's like something's after you is what it felt like, right? At least while you were younger, something was after you. And Daniel, I know, you know what I mean? Like you've dealt with this stuff. I'm sure you guys have reflected on this together, probably. Why do you feel like these things have you in their scope?
Easy. I mean, that's an easy question for us, or easy answer for us. And I will tell you, before I answer that, I will say this. I'm glad he experiences stuff. And I know he's glad I experienced stuff, because together it keeps us sane. And what I mean by that is like, I know if something happens, I could go to him and tell him. Now, it's got to the point where this stuff's so crazy and the stuff that I experienced, he don't even want to hear it no more. Not because he don't believe me, it's because he knows how crazy it is.
Yeah.
So usually if something happens to me, I'll just text him, but hey, you know. And so and so forth. But the same thing with him. But now that he's older and he has kids, he don't really experience things like he used to. I mean, he still does every now and then. A lot of times it's with me, but it really doesn't really mess with him too much as bad as it really did before. But to answer your question, I believe, not trying to get too spiritual here or too in depth, but I believe that God really knows his anointed ones. And what I mean by that is like before even God says God says in scriptures that I knew you before you were born.
Right.
You know, I can count the hairs on your head. And I truly firmly believe that. And I believe that our purpose is bigger than this world. And what I mean by that is like I believe that God, before we were created and formed in our mother's womb, God's like these two are mine. They're gonna do big things for me. You know, and our mom always told us that, you know, when we were adopted, God has big plans for your guys' lives. She's like, God's gonna use, and my mom told us this, our mom told us this when we were kids. I mean, I remember 3, 4 years old sitting around the table, they were teaching us how to tithe, and they're telling us, you know, God has big things planned for you. You're gonna do great things for God. And I'm not trying to like to boast us or like, hey, you know, Michael's touched by God, he's gonna do all these crazy things. But
I'd be honest with you, like my walk with God throughout my life has not been, steady. Like I've had my ups and downs. I've, wanted to do things my way and see if I could get things done my way, and come to find out my way is not always the right way or the easiest way, or you
Amen.
know. So it's a lot of balance. I think we're like Job in a lot of the sense. I think God gives some of his strongest warriors battles that he knows that they can handle, that are not too far out of reach.
Right.
They're always going to depend on God to come back and be like, hey, we're still like Job was. Even though God let the devil beat him down and take everything from him, he still came back to God.
or
Right.
He never left him. He let God do this to him, but he was still a faithful servant to God.
Yeah. Faith builders. Yeah, man.
and
And I'm not saying that I'm gonna out here being, the greatest prophet for Jesus, because by all means, like I don't see that. But God's will is a lot different than what we have in store for our own lives.
Amen.
I believe like the things that we go through in our life, and I think the things that we've been through are things that God has put in our life because he wants to see where you depend. Like, do you going to depend on him, or are you going to fall for the way this wicked world is and all the temptations, and and he'll let you make all the decisions you want.
Right.
You're going to learn the hard way.
Right.
and play on that too. I also believe it's testimony. And the reason why is because God uses people to reach people that you would never think could reach people just because of what they've been through. And, and do I wish the stuff that I've experienced on anybody? No, absolutely not.
Right.
But I believe that God's going to use me that to open doors. And somebody who's battling demonic oppression or demonic entities, God will allow me to be able to be the one to be there for them and to pray over them, or to deliver through the power of Christ, because it's not us that does that. God gives us the authority. Absolutely. Amen.
Amen.
It is not Daniel Swarthout that's out there casting demons out. It's the Lord doing it and using me as a vessel to do that. And I think that that's what really comes down to, is the testimony that we could bring, because who knows who needs to hear something about a story like this. And so Mike and I, we just really stay in our faith, and of course we falter, we sin, we're not perfect, but our faith is strong and big to us. And I think that was when we experience things, it's nice, because then I know at the end of the day, hey, I'm not crazy, I know this is real.
It's like somebody always told me, they said you always go back to your roots.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, what are your roots? Your roots are Jesus, right? That's what you been said, that's what you believed in, that's what you've been taught your whole life.
Yeah, man.
Don't know anything else, you always go back to your roots.
Mhm.
And that, our root is God. So, like I said, and we're not perfect. We do falter, we do make mistakes, and but there's a lot of things like your story could help somebody else,
Absolutely.
or there's somebody
Mhm.
that the same thing that you're going through, or I'm going through, or Bo's going through, and you tell a story, and they're like, I've had that happen to me, but I'm glad to know that somebody else has experienced the same thing, and I don't have to feel like I'm crazy or I'm ashamed to say something about it now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
I think a lot of it is testimony.
Absolutely.
My parents always said your testimony is one of your biggest things in life.
Amen.
Well, not that, your testimony may be the only Bible somebody's ever read.
There you go.
How God worked through you and how He works through you, or He uses you,
Yeah.
and
So one of my biggest things is like growing up, like this will go into one of my stories is, my parents have always tried to deviate you from sinful things or things that are going to get you temptation into doing something like the Ouija board.
Yeah.
I've never played with the Ouija board in my life until I was married. I was married and I had my daughter. Dan was actually with me. I actually got Dan to play with it with me. Because you hear stories and you see these videos, and I was always skeptical of them. I didn't believe it. I thought it was just something, it was just a board game. I'm I'm a firm believer in Ouija board, 100%, and I will tell you why. Um, we played with this thing, and you know, we asked it simple questions like, "What is my name?" and it would spell out my name, and it kind of freaked me out because I'm like, "Whoa, how do you know my name?" And so my wife would ask you questions, Dan would ask you questions, and we played with it for a little bit that night. And I remember we put it up, and the next day I told my wife, I said, "Is it bad that the whole night I'm laying in bed, I'm just trying to think of questions to ask it, like this is what I want to ask it, like this is what I want to know." And
well, backstory. The first night we played with it, it scares you guys so much that you asked me to close it.
yeah,
And I told you guys after we closed it, I was like, "Don't play with this. Don't touch this again."
yeah,
We had that conversation.
Yeah,
I made him promise. I said, "Dude, don't touch this,"
yeah,
dude.
because it did. It scared him. It was saying some weird stuff that night, and even Katie, his wife, she was bothered by it. Which, I mean, any sane person would be bothered by it. But we promised each other.
yeah.
We promised each other. I said, "Don't touch this. Don't play with this no more."
Was it like
And
telling you things that nobody should know?
What we did, it got just so consuming, like because of the questions. Like I just like throughout the day, I'm like, man, like, and I finally told my wife, I said, "Let's get it."
now they got it when I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
They got it in the
Yeah.
morning when I'm sleeping. They pulled it out.
It's
So
sneaky,
we're like,
man.
let's get it. Let's just start. Let's just play with it. And so we did. We got it, and we got it in the living room. And I remember her mom, my wife's mom, was in the kitchen doing something, and we started asking her questions. And at first, it was okay. It was all fun and games, and then it started to
Or
get.
so you thought.
So we thought. So we thought. Then it started getting really dark and twisted. I remember. I forget what was the questions that we were asking, but at one point it started talking about my daughter. It named my daughter's name. Um, and we were like, that's what kind of freaked me out at first because I'm like, how do you know my daughter's name? Like, my daughter hasn't even been around this board. Like, I don't understand it. Well, it got to the point where it says, "We want your daughter." And I was like, "Yeah, no, man, you can't have my daughter."
Right.
And they said, "Well, your daughter's going to end up sick, real sick, and she's going to end up in the hospital." And I was like, "Well, no, whatever." Then they started talking about me, and they said,
After you told them that they can't have it.
"Yeah." After I said, "Well, you can't have my daughter," I said, "That's just no, you can't have her." Well, they started talking about me. They said, "Well, you're going to get in this accident at work, terrible accident at work," and I was like, "What?" I was like, "No, no, 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 no." And they're like, "Yeah, you're gonna end up badly hurt or something." And I was like, I didn't know what to think really, because it was talking about my daughter, it was talking about me, and then I don't know if it said anything about my wife at the time. I don't think it did. But it freaked us out to the point where we were like, okay, no more. This is it. We got to put it up. We
Right.
can't touch it anymore. Just leave it alone. So we told Dan, and
Oh, you came and got me.
yeah,
You came and woke me up, and you asked me to close it again.
yeah. So you did. I think you did close it. We put it up. Did we burn it after that?
No,
Or was this later on?
This is later on, because what happened was after we closed it, he was telling me all these things.
I don't remember if we.
And of course, when I'm sitting there trying to close it, that's what the demon's telling me. There's 7 of them, is what they had said, and they said they were coming from Michael, were coming from Lily, and Michael's like, no, he's pacing the house. He's like, no, you can't have my kid, you can't have my daughter. And I kept telling him, Mike, I'll handle it, Okay, so I was like, no, you can't have Lily. And then they kept talking about they're gonna put him in an accident. He's gonna get an accident. And I was like, no, you can't have my brother. And I got to where I really truly believed I closed it. And we just sat around the house and talked. And I told him, I was like, you put this up, don't touch it, leave it alone, hide it, do something with it. I was like, Barry, I don't care, do something with it. Don't ever play with this again. I leave to go do the ministry I was doing.
Yeah.
And
That's right.
The week late, during that week, he's texting me. We text almost every day. And he was texting me all the stuff that's happening at the house.
Yeah.
How Lily's toys would start moving across the floor, or his mother-in-law would start seeing this figure in the bedroom, or what? I mean, what else is you guys see at the house?
The dog Sammy would just start barking. She'd start barking at the corner. We had a couch in the corner of the living room, and when nobody was sitting there, she would just her fur would stand up, and she would just start barking. Things would turn on.
Mm-hmm.
It sounded like people were walking through the house when there was nobody there. Sometimes I would be home by myself, and I would sound like I'd hear my wife and my kids calling my name. Nobody was home.
Like a mimic.
Like a mimic.
So you closed it, but whatever it was, it already got permission to come in.
One of them did. Something did. But keep going.
And it was just different things. And it got to the point where I didn't like being in the house by myself. Like I knew I was going to be home with my daughter by myself. We would spend the day outside. We'd be in the driveway. We would be doing something until at least somebody else came home,
And so that plays a part in it. It got to the point where it was bothering him so much that him and his father-in-law burnt it.
No, my mother-in-law.
Oh, I thought it was you and Dan.
No,
him and Carrie burnt it. But here's the kicker. He's telling me throughout the week, I'm gone. I think I'm in Texas right now. And he's texting me saying that all this stuff's happening at the house. He's saying, Dan, I think you're gonna have to come back to the house and bless it. And I was like, okay. I was like, well, let me finish this week out. I will be there this weekend. And whatever. I said, whatever you do, don't touch the Ouija board.
Yeah.
I text my uncle, the one I told you about last time, our uncle. I text our Uncle Gary, and I tell him. And it was so weird, bro, because it was the same day, almost to the exact same timeline. And it was just the weirdest thing, the weirdest coincidence to it. Because I try to get a hold of my uncle. I call him multiple times. He doesn't answer the phone. I shoot him a text. He doesn't respond. But he always responds to me, whether it's late in the day, whenever. But that whole morning, I just have this urging in my spirit, and I'm just blowing him up, trying to get a hold of him. He's not answering. He's working. That morning, Michael burns that Ouija board.
It was that night.
So it was the next night or whatever. It was the timeline because it was the same. It was what I'm saying is it was so close in time because it was so weird how it works. Because when I finally got a hold of Uncle Gary, I told him what was going on, and the first thing when he finally hears everything, the first thing he tells me, he says, whatever you do, don't burn it.
Oh, no.
He says, if you burn it, and he was big in the occult, our uncle was, he knew so much witchcraft or all that darkness, all that stuff. He was just so well versed in it. And so he just knew so much. And he told us, he said, whatever you do, don't burn it. Because if you burn it, it'll come true. And you will release whatever is whatever entities are in that board you're setting free. And so I had to break the news to my uncle that Michael had burnt it. And my uncle's like, what did it tell you? So of course I told him this, that Michael's gonna get an accident, blah blah blah, all this stuff, and my uncle's like, Daniel, you need to go to the house and bless it. 2 days later, I want to say probably like because that was probably like I don't remember what day exactly, Tuesday, Wednesday, or something like that. Because Thursday or Friday, you text me. He's outside with Lily, my niece, and he's like, bro, something's watching me. And I was like, what? And he's like, I could feel something watching me. And I was like, where? And where the house was that they lived at the time, they had like woods, not like a forest, but like woods, trees in the back.
It went further back. It was pretty wooded back then.
Yeah, okay, it's pretty wooded, but I wouldn't say it's like a forest or anything, but it was pretty wooded.
Yeah,
Dark enough that at nighttime you can't see through the trees.
Right.
But Michael said there's something in the trees staring at me. And I was like, what? And I was like, take a picture. What could it hurt? Take a picture. He takes a picture and he sends it to me. I wish I still had this. I would send it to you right now if I could. This was years ago. And we just don't have it because then you couldn't really transfer pictures over phones. It was a hot, you know how it was. But I send that picture. I tell my Uncle Gary that Michael has sent me a picture. He's like, send it to me. And so I was like, okay. So I sent it to him. And I kid you not, I sent him the picture. Maybe 5 minutes later, he calls me. I mean, he's blowing my phone up. I answer the phone. I was like, yeah. He's like, where are you? And I was like, I'm in Texas. And he's like, when are you going to be at Michael's house? And I was like, this weekend. He's like, Danny, if you could go today, go today. And I was like, what? And he's like, there's hellhounds on his property. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I'm going to send you the picture back and I'm going to circle them and I want you to see them. Sure enough, in the picture that Michael sent me, in the trees over on this side, on the right-hand side, my Uncle Gary circles this big old dog. And on this left side, he circles this big old dog. They were the foundation of the end of the foundation of the house, like where the property line was, where they owned. They were sitting there established, just staring at him. And my uncle sent it to me. He's like, Danny, you got to bless this house. You got to pray over this house because whatever you guys let loose, those are his companions. And so that was the first time he ever experienced it. You remember my story about the hellhounds?
Yeah.
I don't know if they're the same ones, but it was crazy. So I ended up going to the house.
That thing didn't burn. Like it didn't burn the first time. Like it took us. I want to tell you, it took us like 10 times just to get it to burn. And when I told you when it burned, it wasn't just like a regular old fire. Like there were colors in this fire that I've never seen a fire have. And I'm talking about like there was like green. Like you see green in the movies. Like usually if you see green fire, it's evil fire or some kind of sword.
Right.
But there was green fire. There's green fire. There was like an orange fire that I've never even seen the color. Like it's not just a regular orange fire you usually see. Like the colors coming out of this thing it was crazy. Like I'm like, this isn't normal. Like you don't see stuff on fire. Usually stuff burns at either blue or red or whatever. No, it was green. And after we burned it that night, I remember I hated going out because you had to, when you came out the door, you had to go down the walk basically to the driveway to take the trash out. And I hated it. Because I really did feel like there was something in the woods right there, just always watching me. And it freaked me out. I mean, it really did because, I didn't know. So if I had to go to my car or come from my car to the house, I would run. Because I didn't want to be out there any longer than what I had to, in the dark, because it just didn't feel right.
And then so that was the Ouija board, but then fast forward. What, 2 years? 2.5 years?
Yeah.
I'm living in California.
Yeah. 2.5 years later, I was working for a power company out here. I worked.
Was that Ameren?
Yep. I worked for Ameren. I worked 7 days. What did I work? I worked 7 days on, and then I was off for 7 days. So I was coming in on a Tuesday. It was a Tuesday night. Tuesday morning. I got off work, and it was like 2 days before Thanksgiving. And I remember I was gonna go home that morning, go to bed because I had to work Wednesday night, and I was gonna be done for my 7 days. And it was about 6:45. I got in my car from work, and I took the normal way I always take home. No issues, no problems. And I got down to the highway. I crossed over the highway, and it was like another 1 or 2 miles to my house, and so I was at my stoplight, and my light turned green, and I was going over, and next thing I know, I got T-boned by a semi. Took me, and he hit me so hard he spun me around. My back end took his whole gas tank off. He went like a whole nother mile down the road. Um, I came to in my car. Um, the first thing that I remember is I woke up, and I remember I smelled gas, and I knew I had to get out of my vehicle. Um, my seatbelt was gone. I didn't have a seatbelt. So I remember I come crawling out. My window was the only window in my car that I had just blown out. The only window. My windshield was still intact. The passenger side, three back windows were all intact. My window was the only one that was completely just blown out.
Wow.
I remember I came headfirst out of my window, and I remember seeing the road. I hit the road headfirst, and I blacked out again. And I woke up to a guy standing above me, and he's like, "Don't move." He was, "But do you know what just happened to you?" And I said, "I think he hit me." And the guy's like, "Oh my God, you are alive." He said, "Don't move. EMS is coming. The ambulance is coming to get you." And I just remember I'm laying there, and people thought I got ejected out of the vehicle where I was laying, and they came pick me up. And I remember the fire chief lived 4 miles down, and he said I was actually getting in my vehicle to go to work. He said I heard it. He said I heard it. He said I jumped in my car, my truck, and he said and I took off as fast as I could go.
Wow.
The state trooper came up, asked me what happened. I told him, I said, from what I knew, my light turned green. I said, I don't remember anything after that. He said, won't be honest with you. He said 2 inches, and he said, me and you would not be talking right now. He said, that is the difference between 2 inches, just 2 inches. And he said, you would be gone. So that was the first one that happened from the Ouija board. They said, you're going to get a bad accident at work. Well, I was leaving work. I got hit by a semi. Almost killed me. So the next 3 years, I was in a civil lawsuit against the trucking company. I went to the doc. I was seeing doctors for 3 years. I had surgery. I had, it was basically hell, really, for 3 years.
Yeah, man.
I lost a lot of myself in that 3 years. We started to rebuild after that. I'd say probably a year or so later, my daughter got hit. She has asthma, and I remember she came home from school one day and wasn't feeling the very best, and we didn't think anything of it. Well, that night I had to work. Well, I had to go in early that morning, and I got up, and my wife was gone and my daughter was gone. I was like, me and my son's in the crib. I got to get to work here pretty soon. Where is everybody? Well, the wife came home and she said, I had to go to Walgreens. Lillian can't breathe. I'm hoping maybe we can get her some, medicine into her lungs. And so we're sitting there and we're trying to pump her full of her, nebulizer, and it's not working. And I got to be at work at an hour or so. And finally, I was like, we're taking her to the hospital. So we did. And the doctor said her lungs collapsed. We got to take her, ship her to St. Louis, and we'll ship her to St. Louis. She'll go to Children's. They'll put her in the ICU over there. and then we'll just kind of monitor from there. And we were there for a week.
Wow.
We could get her to actually have enough strength in her lungs to be okay. So that was the second part of the Ouija board. You know, they said your daughter's gonna end up sick.
Yeah.
She did, you know, and it was probably a good like a year or two later. I was sitting outside one night and I was just kind of thinking about things, and I turned around and I looked at my wife and I said, "Check this out." I said, "You remember when we played with that Ouija board at your mom's house?" And I said, and the way it was talking about Lillian was gonna get sick and I was gonna get in this accident. And I said, "Well, all those came true." And I remember she looked at me and she said, "You're absolutely right." I said, "So, I mean, it's real. I mean, they basically predicted what was going to happen to me. It may not have happened right away, but over a certain amount of time, those things did happen. You know, we did end up going through these things, and that's what I told him. I said, ever since then, I've never looked at one. I've never touched one. I believe in them 100%, man. I
Yeah,
believe
man.
or to something that you don't have an idea what it is or you can't control it, you know? So it's stuff like that, you know, lessons. It's lessons you learn. And sometimes the hard way. Like I've never really believed in them. I thought I was skeptical of them, but after going through all that, I'm like, I 100% believe, you know.
Yeah, no doubt.
It's just there's demonic force in there that's just willing to take whoever's the weakest, and that's what they'll do.
Hmm. Man. Whew. Yeah.
It's crazy, man. You look back on it, and I tell Dan all the time, I'm like, I don't understand how we get stuck into this stuff. Like, why did we have to go through this stuff? And I don't go through the things like he does on the level that he goes through them. Like I do have things that happen to me to this day, but they're little things. Like I can be home by myself, like I said, and I can hear my wife or my kids calling my name and nobody's there.
Cool.
You know, stuff like that. But
So when he used to live with me, when him and his wife were going through some stuff, and he'd stay with me and Cody, our youngest brother. He stayed with us for like what, 2 years, 2.5 years, something like that, almost 3.
yeah, something like that.
And he had at the job he had that well, same job that you basically have now.
Yeah.
But he would drive an hour and a half to work,
Yeah.
2 hours to work, hour and a half to work there, and then an hour and a half to work home. And he worked 7 days, have 6 days off.
Yeah. 12-hour shift.
12-hour shifts.
So my day was like a 16-hour day. You know, I'd
Wow.
get up at 2:30 in the morning and I wouldn't be home until like 5:30 that night.
Yep.
So it was long.
And
long
then
days.
we would stay up together till about 10,
Mhm.
10-ish, and he'd go to bed, and he'd do it 7 days straight, and then he'd have 6 days off. He hated the 6 days off. Not because he hated being home at our place by himself. Because I would work a lot. I mean, I worked 60 hours a week then. So I'd be at work and he'd be at home alone. And
I hated it because when you were gone, that's when the house came alive. Like, and it was weird because I always stayed downstairs. That was my domain, was downstairs. Like I could watch TV, I could sit on the couch. And I would always tell Dan, I'm like, I don't know what it is, but every time you and Cody are gone, I said, this house goes crazy.
Man.
I said, man, you watch TV, Dan, and it sounds like there's people in your room walking around. And I said, I said, your dogs will just start going crazy for no reason. And I said, I don't go up there. I said, if I do go up there, I go up to take a shower. I said, usually I shut the door and lock the door. I said, but I don't hang up upstairs.
Right.
But I would hear things all the time in Dan's room, like just banging and clanging,
or something walking around.
Yeah.
And like he would text me all the time though, like all the time. And he'd be like, dude, there's something in your room. And then it got to the point, even when we would get his kids during 1 week, and then the next week his wife would have him. they actually got to a part where, because for a while you didn't even see the kids,
Yeah.
but then finally we got to the point where Katie was civil, and she would allow us to have the kids for the week or the weekend or whatever. They was come stay with us, and Mav was probably 3, 4 then, and Lily was probably what 7, 8, something like that. I don't, something around there, and they absolutely refused to go in my bedroom.
Really?
They wouldn't go upstairs unless I was home, and they would not go upstairs to my room unless I was in my room and I was awake. Even if Mike was like, "Go get your clothes," because usually we kept their clothes in my room, in their dresser, and he's like, "Go get your clothes" or whatever. They'd wait till I'm up or until I was coming downstairs, and then Mav would be like, "Could you go with me?" And he would go with me, and we get his clothes. But it got to the point where they could sense it. They wouldn't.
They were terrified.
And my girlfriend, Jada, she would never. She hated being at my place by herself, and so then it was just yeah. And so he's experienced things with me. He's seen things with me, especially when we were growing up. So he used to experience sleepwalking. And it was like not bad, but it would be.
There's times looking back now, like I think there was times I remember I would wake because I go to bed every night. I put my glasses on my table next to my bed. But there was times I remember I'd wake up in the morning and my glasses wouldn't be there.
Couldn't find them.
And I'd be like, what the heck, man? I put them there before I went to bed because everything else is right there. And I'd be like, Dan, did I do something last night? Did I sleepwalk? Dan like, dude, he said, you got up and you went upstairs. And I'm like, no, I didn't. He'd be like, yeah, you did. He said, I was trying to call you, Mike. And he said, you wouldn't answer me or nothing.
Wow.
Like, I'd be like in between my wall and my bed. Like, I don't know.
So I really, you see in those scary movies when the kids sleepwalk and they do like the demons like walking them. So like, I believe that, man.
Yeah, man.
I believe that just because I've seen him do it. Just like, I didn't see not something walking him or anything or have their hand on him. But I mean, when you don't, I do. I believe in that stuff. Yeah, we just, I mean, he's definitely experienced some stuff with me. But now that we're older, not together.
No, it's never together anymore. It's always like I experience a lot of stuff on my own, but like no. Usually like your experiences though are usually before I ever come out or usually after I come out. Like they're never when I'm usually here. I never get to really see that side of it.
No, and actually now that I'm older, they're way more intense. I mean, even since the last time you and I spoke, Bo, it's worse, more intense than that. Because you remember, so the night that we had our podcast, the day we had our podcast, it was April 1st. That night, remember I told you that they pulled me out of the bed.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that was that night, and I remember that. I mean, it was because I texted you that night or the next day, and I was like, "Man, you never guess what happened last night." But yeah, that night, 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's the thing is, I've slept in this bed obviously for years, and I sleep with my dogs, and I'm so used to my dogs. I've slept on the edge of my bed, and my girlfriend laughs at me because even when like if she stays over or we're in bed watching a movie, I'm always on the edge of the bed. And she's like, "Babe, you're gonna fall off." I was like, "No, I'm so used to it because this is how I am with the dogs. My dogs take over my bed, and I just get the edge of it." But I've never once fallen off my bed ever, never in my sleep. Even when my dogs are like that, I can literally sleep on the edge of the bed. I'll wake up in the morning. I'm on the edge of the bed. But that night, I got yanked out of bed, and I know I did because when I woke up or when I hit the ground so hard, I wasn't next to the bed. I was in the middle of my room. And I'm looking around. My dog is looking at me. Obi, my boxer, he's looking at me like, "What are you doing, man?" And because he was sleeping on the bed. And I remember I woke. I hit the ground so hard I woke up. I just jumped. I looked around. Ain't nothing there. I jumped back in bed, and I'm thinking, man, throughout the day, I'm thinking maybe I had a dream. Maybe I dreamed it,
Yeah.
And Cody, I get home that day. It was a Wednesday. I get home that day, or Tuesday. I'm sorry, it was Tuesday. I get home that day, and Cody was, he's like, "Hey man, he's like, did you hear that loud bang at like 4 in the morning?" I was like, "Oh yeah." I was like, "That was me." He's
Uh,
like, I told him. He's like, "Dude, it shook the whole house."
yeah.
He said, "It shook the whole house." He said, "It woke me up. I heard it. It was crazy." And sure enough, on my toes, I had bruises, like somebody you could see where something physically grabbed my left foot, the one that would have been closest to the edge,
Right.
and yeah, I had bruises there.
Man. And
And
it's not like
so I
you're
mean, it
like,
didn't really bother me, to be honest with you. I mean, of course I messaged you and told you about it, but I
yeah.
didn't see nothing. I didn't feel nothing. I just remember waking up and hitting the ground. So I was like, it is what it is. But
Eh,
then throughout the year, it's been getting worse. Um, Actually, I'm gonna tell you one that just really shakes me up still. And I don't know what age group really listens to your podcast, but this one I was probably wouldn't really recommend with kids, just to be real with you. Um, so it was probably close to the time I think it was either the night I did the confessional podcast or it was the night that it was released. I can't remember which one it was, but every night, if I've done a podcast with anybody, so the night that the day we did a podcast, something happened that night. The day you released it, something happened that night. The day I was on AFK was their name then, I think. Something happened that night, and theirs was live, so I don't think they did like a post release later or anything like that.
right.
But something happened that night, and then the night that I was on the confessional, something happened, and the night that the confessionals drops, the episode dropped, something happened. It's always those nights. But this one's pretty intense. So then I went to bed, and like I told you before, I could usually kind of feel when something's going to happen. And I would experience things so much that it got to the point where I would literally open up Psalms 91 and I would
Mhm.
read it out loud in my room every night.
Yes.
Um, and Actually, before I tell you this story, I want to tell you another one that plays in the part with that. I got home Tuesday night one night. Me and my girlfriend Jada, we went out to dinner. We almost go out almost every Tuesday, just the two of us. And actually, I had texted you this. I had told you, hey, something crazy happened tonight, but I never really got to go into detail with you. I just texted you and told you.
Yeah, man.
And actually, I asked you the same thing. I was like, hey, have you ever known of dogs getting, sick from the supernatural? I don't know if you remember that text, but I had asked you about, I think if you responded like I heard one time or something like that where a dog threw up because of something. But anyways, we went out to dinner and she didn't stay the night and she didn't come home with me. She just dropped me off. And she kissed me and we said goodbye to each other and I went in my room. I mean, I went inside. Cody's closing, so it's a Tuesday night where I'm home alone. Mike's not here, Cody's not here, it's just me and our dogs. And we had four dogs at that time. Cody had his pit bull and he had his cane corso mix, and then I have a boxer and I have a Rottweiler. And so I had those four dogs. And I get home and it's eerie, man. As soon as I walk into the house, it feels different. It feels off. I go downstairs, I get the dogs, let them outside, go bathroom and all that stuff. And then I'm in the kitchen and I just feel like something's watching me. And so I tell myself, all right, it's 10 o'clock at night. I said, I'm gonna feed the dogs, let's feed the dogs and get them ready for bed so I can get ready for bed because I got to work the next morning. And Wednesdays are a long day for me. So I try to go to bed at a decent time on Tuesday nights. But I bring the dogs in, I put all their bowls together, give them their food, get the water in the middle so that way they can eat and drink and all that stuff. And then we have a bar stool that I sit on in the kitchen to kind of monitor them because they like to, try to steal each other's food sometimes. Dogs be dogs.
Right.
And we're sitting there and it was weird because Anya, which is Cody's Cane Corso mix, doesn't even touch her bowl. She comes and she's usually one of the first ones to the bowl, happy, eating, all happy, go merry. She comes and I'm sitting on this bar stool, like skip too far, sitting like this, right? She comes and she sits right here, right in the middle of my legs. Doesn't move, just sits and stares. I'm petting her, rubbing her. I was like, "You okay? You okay?" And doesn't move, doesn't even look at the food. My boxer is over to the side. He comes and he lays right here. And then my Rottweiler, she stops eating. She comes and she lays right here. And then Alora, the pit bull, comes and lays right here. So I have all four dogs around me, basically. And I'm just sitting there. And they're not touching their food. They're not eating. And they're just acting abnormal. So I was like, something's gonna happen. So I called my mom and I was like, "Hey mom, she's like, what are you doing?" I was like, "I just got back from dinner." I said, "I was trying to feed the dogs." I said, "They're acting really weird." And I told her, "Mama, I'm actually gonna say his name now. I think that, where I'm at in my life, it is what it is. And I like to not really, I don't say I like to talk about it, but when I talk about it now, I'm not afraid to say his name because here's the thing, it could help somebody else. Maybe somebody else experienced the same entity or whatever, but his name's Zany. And so I called my mom and I was like, "Mom, I think I said Zany's here." She's like, "How do you know?" I was like, "I could feel him." I said, "I can't see him, but I could feel him." And so the dogs are acting weird. They're not leaving my side. They're sitting right. They're sitting with me. And I said, they're not moving. And she's like, "Daniel, read Psalms." And I was like, "Okay." And at that time, Bo, I couldn't remember which one it was.
Right.
And I was like, "Mom, I don't remember which one it is." And I had texted you actually. And I was like, "Hey, Bo, which one is it?" And before you responded, I'm talking to my mom, and she's like, "Psalm 93." I was like, "No, Mom, that's not right. It's not Psalm 93." She's like, "Yes, it is." Anyways, I pulled my Bible, go to Psalms 93, and I start reading it. I was like, "Mom, this isn't it." And she's like, "Well, which one is it?" And I turned the page, and there's Psalm 91, and I start reading it to myself, and I was like, "Mom, it's this one." And she's like, "Well, read it out loud." And then you text me confirming it was Psalms 91. So I was like, "Oh, yeah, it's Psalm 91." And she's like, "Read it." And this is when it gets crazy. I was like, "Oh, okay." So she's like, "Read it out loud." She's like, "There's power in the word when you read it out loud."
Amen.
So I started reading it word for word, verbatim for verbatim, just straight down. And as I start reading it, the dogs start barking. They jump up, they start barking, they start acting weird. Like Kona, my Rottweiler is very protective of me. She jumps up, she starts barking, going nuts. My boxer is barking, and the room changes. The whole atmosphere changes. And I said, "Mom, he's here. I can feel him." And she's like, she starts praying over me. I could hear her on the speakerphone just praying for me. And I'm sitting there. She's like, "Keep reading, son. Keep reading." And I keep reading the scripture and Psalms 91. And I kid you not, I felt him stand behind me. And I felt his presence, not God, I felt Zany stand behind me and touch me. And I turn around and I yell, "Zany, you have no power here." And my mom's hearing me battle this demon, and my mom's praying for me, and I'm yelling, and "In Jesus' name, get out of my house. You have no power here. You're not allowed here." And mom's like, "Keep reading, son. Keep reading." So I keep reading the scripture, and I keep reading the scripture, and I'm not even done yet, and I could feel him touching me and trying to be around me, and the dogs are going nuts, and the whole room's just chaotic, and my mom's hearing it all, and I finally get to the end of the scripture, and it stops. And what you hear now, just that's what you heard. The dogs stop barking. The dogs stop. They stop doing their thing. They're quiet. My mom's still praying. I'm standing there trying to catch my breath, just emotional because I'm crying because I could feel the presence of evil, and I'm praying over my house, and I'm like, "Mom, I know it. Zany was here," and she's like, "Can you feel him?" And I was like, "No, I don't feel him anymore." And we start just talking about just life, and she's like asking me how work was. She's trying to get my mind off of the whole matter of it all.
Right.
And I was like, "Mama, I'm opening the balcony door and let the dogs out to go potty." And so that's what I did. I opened up the door and I let them run around. And I step outside. It's a decent night, and I'm on the phone with my mom and still talking outside, and we're talking about work. And all of a sudden, Laura, the pit bull, she's in the yard and she starts barking, and she's I have a fence that goes around my backyard, and she's barking, and she's pointing at that fence. She's just looking at that fence barking, and all of a sudden my other dogs see something. They start barking, and I was like, Mom, there's something still here. And she's like, son, she's like, keep praying. So she starts praying again, and I'm praying, and I get to the point where I go downstairs into the yard because the dog's darting to the fence, to the side of this fence. So there's barking and going nuts. And I stand over the fence and I start praying over the house and over the yard and over the four foundations, calling for just, protection. And it stops. The dogs stop barking. They stop again. And I said, Mom, I think it's done. And she's like, okay. And so she's on the phone with me. I go up to the balcony and I'm talking to her. And this is the part that blows my mind to this day. I'm looking at the fence where the dogs were looking and they're barking. Like I could see Alora still looking over there. And I see black figures running the fence line.
No.
Running up and down the fence line trying to get in. And on this side and on this side and on the back of the fence. And I'm saying, Mom, I can see them. I can literally see the demons. And she's like, pray. And so we start praying again over the house and over the foundation. And just a peace comes over and they're gone. And so I'm sitting there, finished talking to my mom. Everything stops. She prays over me again. And I go and I sit in my room. I call Cody to tell him because he's at work. I don't bother Michael because by the time this is on, it's 11:30, almost midnight. And I'm sitting there, and I kid you not, all four of my dogs throw up in my room.
Wow.
And so I'm like, what? So of course I clean it up and go to bed and I just talked to my mom about it, and she's like, Daniel, I think that you need to start reading Psalms 91 every night before you go to bed. A protection, pray over your room, pray over your dreams, pray over all of it. And I was like, okay. And so I started doing that, man, every night, like clockwork. Right before I go to bed, I'd open Psalms 91. I'd read it out loud in my room with the door closed and the lights on. And when I got done, I'd start praying. I'd do a prayer every night. And for weeks, nothing. And we have a family Bible study that we do every Monday night. And right now we're going through the book of Genesis. We've been doing this now for over a year. Very religious. At 9:00, we all Zoom call each other, video call each other, and we go over it. And we did the book of Daniel. And I said, now we're doing the book of Genesis because we did Galatians, no, was it Ephesians? We did the book of Daniel, then we did the book of Ephesians. Now we're starting with Genesis and just going through the book of Genesis. And so I even told when at the end of each of those Bible studies, we have prayer time and we, have prayer requests. And I was so happy because it's been almost 3 months and anything happened. So I told my parents, I was like, I've been reading my Bible, I've been praying over my room for 3 months now, nothing. I said, it may be done, And my mom and dad were thrilled. Everybody's thrilled. We're talking about it. Just thank God for it. And then that week, that was Monday night. Tuesday night, Zany visits. And this is the most intense visit I've ever had. And so I probably end up falling asleep about 1:30-ish, 2:00, which is a late night for me on a Tuesday night, but I just couldn't sleep. Cody was he was up playing video games for a while, then he finally went to his room to go to bed, and I remember I fell asleep, and I want to say it was probably about 2:30 and I fell asleep. I finally fell asleep. And I woke up to just blackness, just pure blackness. There's no light in my room at all. Couldn't see nothing, but I felt somebody ripping me out of the bed. And I start screaming because I could feel them pulling me, grabbing my feet by my feet. And I turn around, I start kicking it. I start physically kicking it, and I kicked Zany probably 6 times. And I kid you not, it felt like kicking a brick wall. I was so lost in the translation of it all that I thought I was literally facing my wall, kicking my wall. It was that solid. and I'm screaming, holding onto my bed so it don't rip me out of the bed, and I'm kicking it and kicking it, screaming, wakes Cody up. Cody comes running into my room, turns on the light, and my bed is in the middle of the middle of my bedroom. And when he opened the door and turns on the light, I'm halfway off of my bed. My legs are lifted into the air. And he said that half of my body was not even on my bed. And I'm holding back onto the bed like this, like holding onto the mattress. And I had a pillow in this hand. And he said, I'm holding on to everything with dear life. And he said, I'm kicking the air, just kicking. Now, scared Cody to death because he didn't see Zany, but he saw me literally halfway off the bed in the middle of the room, kicking the air. And I told him, I'm so shooken up. I'm crying. I'm literally in tears. I call my mom. My mom answers. I call my mom. I said, Mom, Zany came. And here's the part that's crazy. To prove that I really kicked this dude or this demon, I have burns on every single toe.
He had blisters, and they were like blisters, not like a burn blister. Like I remember, because I came out like the day after some of this happened, and
the weekend you came the weekend,
yeah, and he's like, Mike, look at my toe, and I remember his whole bottom big toe was a whole blister, just a solid blister. Like he looked like he was kicking something as hard as he could.
And here's the thing.
I've never seen anything like it.
Bo, I have a picture of it. I'm gonna send it to your phone so you can see it. But I had it on every single toe. And the thing that was crazy about it is that blister lasted 2 months.
What?
And it didn't go away. My girlfriend would put ointments on it, and she would put a Band-Aid on it, and I would of course work. And so here, I don't know if it was a burn blister. I don't know if it was a friction blister.
I've never seen one.
You get the picture?
Yeah, dude.
And here's the thing: that blister showed up. Not when I was on the phone with my mom, I could feel my toes burning. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, I think I got a blister from it. She's like, no way. And I sent her a picture of it.
Dude, it's not just on one toe either. You got blisters on, well, I can see 3 clearly.
Yeah. Well, it goes every single toe. And she put ointments and Band-Aids on it. And that's why I told my mom, I said, Mom, I kicked that thing. I literally kicked it. It was like touching a brick wall.
My gosh, man.
And I think that's what scared me the most is it was tangible.
Yeah.
It was a tangible physical being in my room that I kicked. A couple nights later, I'm really about to blow your mind here. So I told you we're adopted.
Yeah.
Our birth father got out of prison August, September, July, August, around that time. Dude's been in prison most of his life. He's a believer now, found God.
Thank the Lord.
Absolutely. And actually, and over the last couple of months, we've really been trying. Not really. I wouldn't want to say we're very open to talking to him. Like we have a phenomenal father. Our dad raised us, and that's my father. That's what I look at. But as knowing that this man's our biological father, I still don't want to dismiss the idea. Like if this guy wants to have a relationship with me, I'm still going to be open to be. I believe that's fair because he went through a lot in his life. So we started talking and all this stuff. He heard he bought my novel. Okay. Or he got my novel when he was in prison. He read my novel, fell in love with it. He had so many questions. He called Michael when he got out. I need to talk to Danny. I need to know if this stuff's real because of the supernatural in my novel.
Yeah.
Turns out, here's the parts that are gonna blow your mind. I have not had the chance to call him on the phone and talk to him one-on-one because he got into a, what do you call it, an assisted living house? No,
Halfway house.
halfway house to help him, keep away off the drugs, him and into a job, teach him, where the world that is now. And so he was in a halfway house for months or quite a long time. And he finally got out, but we haven't had a chance to have that one-on-one conversation yet. But while he was in the halfway house, he would still text us on Facebook, message us and stuff like that. And so he messaged me one day asking about my novel and if that stuff's real and if I really experienced it. And I ended up sending him our podcast that we did together. And he listened to it with a lady that's a close friend of his, a close friend of our family growing up, our biological family, I should say. Martina is her name. And she's like, I guess she would be like an aunt to us realistically, because that's how close we are, how close we were, or she was to our biological family.
Yeah.
And they listened to that podcast and blew their mind just because of the stories and about Zany. And they didn't realize that it was so attached. And so our birth dad messaged me talking about it. And Martina messaged me one day saying, Danny, we need to talk. And I was like, sure. I was like, when are you free? She's like, when are you free? And I told her, I was like, you can call me this night. Well, she ends up video chatting me. And we get to talk face to face like we're doing now. And she said, Dan, I'm gonna tell you some stuff and it's gonna blow your mind. She said, it 100% is a blood curse. And I was like, how do you know that? And she said, put it this way. She said, the day they brought you home, your birth parents brought you home from the hospital is the day Zany showed up. She said that the day that they brought you home from the hospital, I don't know. I know my birthday's August 7th. I don't know if they brought me home on August 7th or if it was a couple days later or whatever. But she said the day they brought you home from the hospital, Zany showed up. She said that, and it was so intense. She said with Michael and Darren, Michael obviously, and then our older brother Darren, she said with them, because Michael's 13 months older than me. She said nothing when the years that he, the year and a year and month he was born ahead of me, nothing. But the day that they brought me home, Zany appeared, and she said it got to the point it was so bad that all of your biological parents' friends stopped coming over. They would not visit the house no more because they would see things fly across the room. They would get scratched when they slept. They would get pulled out of bed. They, just different things. And they said it happens. That's when I, came home. And Martina said that it was so intense that we thought then, when I say we thought that the house was haunted because we had just moved there. It wasn't too long that we had been living there, so we thought maybe it was a haunted place. So she said one weekend we decided to go onto the desert in Nevada, and we just pitched, stayed out in the desert. And she said, you know what? She said, that thing followed us. She said, Zany went to the desert with us. And so she told us some stuff that Mike and I never knew. She said that Zany used to possess my mom, our birth mom.
Really?
She said it got to the point where she would get possessed with Zany, and she would be so erratic that she would basically start fights with our birth dad and tell him to hit her and punch me, hit me or whatever. And he would leave because he wasn't going to be around her like that. And which makes sense because we were told that the night that she died, that's what happened. They got into a fight. He ended up leaving. We didn't know that she would edge him on and want him to hit her and stuff. But the night that she died, Martina told me this, the night that our birth mom died, Zany possessed her. And she edged on our birth dad to, hit her or whatever. And he's like, I'm not doing that. And he leaves. And she ends up getting killed that night. So and here's the thing, our birth mom went through a lot of sexual abuse. So the more that we're learning about it, we really believe that she was maybe unwillingly a part of a sex cult.
Yeah. And
just the abuse that she would endure through her life opened doors that maybe she wasn't aware that she opened. But I really do fear for our birth mom's salvation. And Mike and I talked about that. We're on the same page with it because I'm a believer that, you can't be possessed if you're of God, if you have that relationship with God. And I feel like that she wasn't. And I don't, and I pray that she was. And I'm not trying to, I don't condemn people. That's not my job. That's the Lord's. But
Right.
the night that she was killed, she was possessed. And so we kind of, and our mom, she made a good point. She said, well, what if, and she said, we talked about it. As soon as I heard all this stuff, I called my mom and we talked. And she's like, Daniel, what if, she's like, I'm not saying this happened, but what if kind of like the scenario with Michael on the Ouija board when they said, we want Lily, we want Lily. And Michael was like, no, what if it was a situation kind of like that? And your birth mom said, yes. And it attached itself to you. And so our birth dad would tell us, I've been experienced zany myself, all this stuff, and he's in this halfway home, right? And this part's trippy too, is a couple days later, after I had that experience when I kicked Zany, that was a Tuesday night, I believe. Friday night, I get another visit. And I wake up in the middle of there's probably 3 a.m. I wake up and there's 4 demons standing at the foot of my bed. And they're just staring at me. And they're different sizes, different heights, different graphics. I mean, just different. There's 4 of them though. I could clearly see them as day. And I start screaming. And I was like, start screaming. Cody comes running in my room. And as soon as he opens the door and turns the light, they're gone. Zany wasn't there. The part that's trippy is obviously we know that demons aren't omnipresent. They're not God. God omnipresent,
Right.
That same night, I find out because Martina video calls me and we're going over all this stuff. She's telling me all this stuff. That same night that I had the visit of the 4 demons, our birth dad was attacked by Zany in his halfway house, and he was thrown across the room multiple times. And so it was, I don't know, man, it's been trippy. I've had the last time I saw Zany was New Year's Eve. Cody comes home from work. I'm sleeping. And this is the crazy part. This is a crazy story too, is the dogs. So we had a really bad snowstorm around that time frame. So the dogs are like just dirty. And I told Cody, it was funny. I told Cody, I was like, Cody, I'm not going to bathe the dogs tonight. Like give them a full bath and clean the whole house because, tomorrow will be easier. It's not supposed to be that bad. So my floor was pretty dusty that day just because the dirt and the dogs and we have tile in my room. And I told Cody, you're off tomorrow. I said, we'll give the dogs a bath tomorrow when I get home from work. And so we had it all planned. But that night he comes home. I'm sleeping. My window's open. And Cody said that as soon as he closed the door to his car, he hears my Rottweiler barking and going nuts. Cody's thinking that it's because she heard Cody come home. And so she got protective, not knowing that Zany's in my room. And Conan sees Zany and she's barking. She wakes me up barking. I wake up, I see Zany, and he had pulled this chair out because I always have it by my window. He had pulled this chair out and he's leaning on it, just staring at me. And the dogs start barking. Cody hears me start screaming. And so, because he hears me screaming, he's like, oh no. So he goes running and tries to get into the house. He's trying to get his keys on to unlock the door. And he finally gets it. He's running up the stairs to get to my bedroom. And Zany's running at me. And Cody's opening the door. And Zany is right here in front of my face. And I start screaming. I'm screaming because it's a shock, man. You can't help it. You start, you're half asleep. You're sleeping.
Yeah,
you
man.
wake up, see the demon coming at you. I freaked out. You can't. It's an uncontrollable fear. And so I'm screaming. Cody turns on the light. Zany's gone. He's gone. But he left footprints. He left footprints in the sand in the dirt.
The dust, yeah.
In the dust that was settled on the ground that I hadn't got to yet. And I told Cody, I said, this is the one time I'm glad that we didn't clean my bedroom like we had planned. Because look, dude, there's literally footprints.
Wow.
And Cody's like, he's looking at it and he looks at me and they weren't my footprints. and they were facing towards my bed.
Yeah.
My mom's like, well, how do you know that wasn't you playing your video games or something? I was like, because my feet weren't facing that way.
How they'd be facing.
Yeah, they were facing the TV because I'd be sitting in front of the TV. They were facing my bed. And I snapped a picture of it and I sent it to my mom and she's like, you need to clean your floor. I was like, I know. I was like, that's not the point. So but she's like, I see them too. She's like, son, that's crazy. And so like I told Michael, I said, hey man, let's talk to Bo, see if we can get on a podcast with them. I said, I'm sure he'd love to talk to you and hear some of your stories and I have some questions for you. And I told him, I was like, let's see if we can set it up. We set up the date. And actually I told him yesterday, I was like, well, are you coming out tonight or tomorrow? And he's like, well, I'll probably be there tomorrow. I was like, okay. And I warned him, I was like, man, every time I do something like this, something happens. And I was like, so, I mean, I don't wish it. I'm not saying, hey, I just wanted him to prepare.
I think though, Zany has always kind of done stuff like that. It's always when you're by yourself though. He's always made his presence known. Because I remember there was a time we were living together, and at this point in my life, I think I was a corrections officer at the time, but I had a group of friends, and I was always gone. We were always drinking. That's what I was doing at the time. It's either at work or we were drinking. And I remember I told Dan, I said, hey, we're going out to
Cannibal.
I said, we're going to go drink tonight. I said, I'm not going to be home. I said, I'll let you know tomorrow whenever I get home. I know you got to work, so I'll see you when you get home. He's like, all right. And I never forget, man. I came home the next day. Well, Dan texted me. I was out drinking, and Dan texted me, and he's like, hey, man, are you home? And I said, no, dude, I'm at the bar. I said, I won't be home tonight, remember?
And he did tell me that before, Bo. He said, I'm not coming home tonight. I said, we got a hotel room already. I said, me, Bornhop, Jake, and was one other one. So the four of us are going to go to this bar. They just opened up. We're going to go hit it. Hopefully meet some ladies, whatever. And I was like, okay. I was like, you're cool. I was playing Skyrim. I mean, Skyrim came out around that year. And I was killing it.
He texted me, he said, you home? I said, no. I said, remember, I'm at the bar tonight. I said, I'm not coming home. I said, why? And he didn't really say nothing. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe he just forgot, So I did my thing that night, and I remember I got up the next day, and I went home, and I remember Dan was at work. I
worked 30 minutes away, 35 minutes away.
Remember, I got back to our apartment, and I went inside, and at the time, my bedroom was at the very end of the hallway, and then across from my bedroom was the bathroom. So I go down to my room, and I open my door, and when I open my door, my room's a disaster.
And another thing to play into that, Bo, is Mike and I have a lot of respect for each other. We don't go in each other's room unless without permission.
Right.
So like I didn't go in his room, nothing.
No, my room's a disaster. My window's open, it's cold. There's trash all over my floor, and I smoked cigarettes. And I remember I had an ashtray in my room. Well, that was just dumped everywhere. There was like stuff on my walls. And I remember I texted Dan and I said, hey, were you in my room last night? And he said, no. He said, but I'll be home in a little while. So I kind of cleaned up a little bit, got my room back to normal. I was like, well, I'm going to take a shower. Took a shower. It was kind of creepy,
Yeah, man.
Why was my window all the way open? First off, my window was never really open.
And we're on the second floor.
We're on the second floor. So it kind of creeped me out. So I was like, well, I'll leave the door open while I shower, turn on the music and just chill out. Well, Dan comes home and I'm in my room and he comes in and I just remember the look on his face. The look on his face was just like, dude, you'll never believe what happened. And I said, dude, what happened to my room last night? And he goes, I thought you came home. He said, that's why I texted you and asked you if you came home. He said, Mike, I was sitting in my room last night. He said, the door was shut. He said the front door was locked. He said I was playing video games. He said I heard the front door open, the front door unlock. He said somebody come in the front door, closed the front door, locked the front door, went into the kitchen. He said it sounded like they turned on the water faucet. He said I heard running water. He said, and then I heard him come down the hallway, stop in front of my door.
Try to open it.
He said, try to open my door, and then decided not to. And he said, and then I heard him go into your room. He said, and then all I heard in your room was like banging around, like somebody was trying to climb the walls. Like he said, all this commotion. He said, and that's when I asked you if you were home.
I thought he was drunk.
He said,
Yeah,
yeah.
man.
He said, I thought you came home drunk, bro, and was just stumbling around. And I was like, no, I wasn't home last night at all. And he's like, he said, then it stopped. He said it stopped. He said, and then I could see underneath the door. He said I could see like a shadow stop in front of my door again. And then he said after that, he said I played some more video games. He said, and then I went to bed.
And I woke up the next morning because I had to open, and I went to work, and I never went into his room, never checked it, never nothing. And it was the summertime, and his room was ice cold.
Yeah.
With
Wow.
the window.
Yeah.
Because he did text me. He said, "Hey, where you at?" I said, "I'm at work." He's like, "When are you gonna be home?" I said, "I get off at 5." And he didn't respond. And then you text, and I think that's when you took a shower and stuff. But then you text me, "Get home soon as possible. Get home now." So I actually left work early.
Yeah.
So I went to Kara, my boss at the time. I was like, "Hey, I need to go home." I said, "Something happened." And she's like, "What happened?" And she knew because I used to tell her some of the supernatural stuff. And I was like, "I don't know." Mike said that I need to come home.
And it was crazy because my wife at the time would come and stay with me, and she hated it. She would always just close herself into our bedroom. She said, because she always used to tell me, she said, I'd be like, why are you in here? Everything's so dark, you just besides the room. She'd be like, I didn't leave. She said, it terrifies me, Mike. She said, I don't know what is in this place. She said, but it absolutely terrifies me. And I just always blow it off. Like, oh, there's nothing in here, it's just me and Dan. Like, but I remember there was a couple of times, like, I was sleeping, dead asleep one night, and she was sleeping next to me, and she basically jumped on me. She jumped on me and grabbed me real hard and woke me up, scared me. And I was like, what is wrong? She goes, Mike, there. She said, I woke up, and she said, and I looked over at the closet. She said, there was this black figure standing in the corner of your room. She said, that's when I got up and grabbed you. Well, as she's telling me this, right, my door, my bedroom door, mind you, starts moving. She goes, Mike, the bedroom door is moving. I was like, it's because the window's open. She goes, no, it's not, Mike. She goes, we didn't open the window last night. And I got up, I looked, the window wasn't open.
Man.
And I was like, trying to just get it out of my mind, trying to get her distracted. And I was like, well, it's just nothing, just go back to bed. Maybe it's just the air coming on, just moving the door. She's like, no, Mike, I'm telling you. Well, I'd fallen back to sleep, and she gotten up again and went to the bathroom. Of course, it's all dark, so she took her phone to use her flashlight. Went in there. Well, she came running back into the room and woke me up again. And I said, dude, what is wrong? She said, Mike, I went to the bathroom. And she said, and I was coming back. She said, I had my phone in my hand. And she said, I don't know. She said, something scared me. She said, my phone took a picture, Mike. And I said, a picture? She said, yeah, I don't know how or what. Sure enough, it was a picture of the hallway. And in front of Dan's door, I promise you, I wish I still had this picture too. In front of Dan's door was a cloaked, hooded figure. You could see the cloak, it's clear as day. And as she showed me it, and I was laying there, and I'm like, do you see this? And she goes, Mike, it looks like a cloak. It looks like some hooded figure standing in front of Dan's door. And I remember I showed Dan the next day. I told him about it and showed him. And
yeah, because we got Subway.
Yeah.
We were so poor then. We were so poor that we was. I mean, that's when subs cost $5 a foot long, right?
Yeah.
And we hadn't got paid yet for our paychecks. We were so poor that we scrounged up enough change to get 3 foot longs, and we had $15 in change and some tax, whatever. And we went and we got foot longs. And so I actually went and got the foot longs and came home, and that's what they told me. And I was like, "What?" And they showed me the picture, and sure enough, man, the cloak was so dark compared to the outline, like this. It stood out. You could see it, and this
Yeah.
figure's huge.
Just the darkness.
Yeah.
It's just
And it's standing from my bedroom, and so like just that part of it. I mean, we lived there for what, a year before Katie got pregnant.
yeah, we got pregnant, and then mom and dad gave us the house, Granny's old house.
Mm-hmm.
We moved into that, and I tell you what, I never liked my grandma's house growing up. It always gave me creepy vibes. I don't know why. Even though my grandma was a religious lady, believed in God. I mean, she was solid in her faith. Like, but it always gave me creepy vibes.
We would always tell our parents that it was haunted. And of course, as kids, and my parents laughed. It's not haunted. It's Granny's
And I'm
house.
telling you, it was. And
Or something
once
like
we
that.
finally moved into there, just me, you, and my wife at the time,
Mm-hmm.
things happened. Like I remember because we were in the master bedroom. Dan had a bedroom on the other side of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And we would just all be in our rooms, and all of a sudden we would hear something in the kitchen. And we would go in the kitchen, and there'd be a timer. The timer that was sitting on the stove would be sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor. And
Wow.
we'd be, what the heck? Like, how did this get here? Or, the room grandma used to sleep in, grandma's old room. We didn't ever go in that room. That room was just, it just had weird vibes to it.
Get you on this one. Yeah, because
But that house, it came alive. I don't know if it's because we moved into it, and whatever was attached to us was, made itself present in that home too. But
absolutely,
it became a whole different home.
So we lived there for probably 6 months. Well, the three of us together before you and Kate moved to St. Louis.
Yeah.
So we lived there together. And this is like when Snapchat first dropped. Snapchat was starting to become big, and like everybody was starting to get it. I was talking to, I don't remember her name, Bridget, I think, or something like that. There's a girl I was talking to this time, and she had sent me a snap. What are you doing? That's how you communicated then. And I was like this. I took my phone and I just took a snap like this in my room. And it led, like the way that the angle was, I was standing here, the doorway was there, and the Granny's bedroom was across the hall. Well, my bedroom was straight across the hall. And we always kept her door open. Like, I don't know why, we just left it open. I never closed it. I didn't touch her room, man. I didn't want to. But I was standing there and I took that snap. And I was like, just chilling, just got home from work. I don't remember what I said, whatever. But I sent her a snap. She sends me another one. She's like, "Who's that behind you?" And I'm like, "What?" She's like, "There's somebody behind you." And I took my phone and I like went like this. I said, "Ain't nobody in my house because I'm home alone. Or you on the other side of the room, house." And she's like, "No, there was somebody in that snap." And I was like, I don't know. I didn't see it. And I was like, "What?" I said, "Quit playing." And she's like, "No, I'm not playing." She's like, there was somebody there. And
it always happened like if you're the only one in the house. Because I remember like I would go to the bathroom at the end of the hallway. You'd be in the bathroom and you'd have the door closed, and you could see like anybody, or you could see shadows of somebody coming down the hallway. And if you were there by yourself, you can almost 9 times out of 10 you would see shadows. It looked like you could hear somebody like walking down the hallway towards you.
Yeah.
Sometimes, they would the door handle would shake or something, but it was always something. Like I knew it. Like you always got this little sense of a presence that was there. Whether they would make their presence actually known, just depended, I guess, on the opportunity they had. But
it's the same house that I told you my buddy spent the night with me.
yeah.
And it scared him so much that we didn't talk for 3 months.
Yep.
And so like, but that's what we always talk about too. it don't matter where we live. I mean, it's from Southern California, Nevada, Montana, North Dakota, all the states that we lived in, always something. I can tell you something in every house.
Yeah, it finds its way. Like, and that's why I stay so guarded, I guess, because I have my kids, and the last thing I want to do is for someone like that to come home and start attacking my kids.
Yeah.
You know, not saying that I can do everything I can to stop it, but it's just hard because, I hear what he goes through, and I don't go through it nearly as what he does, but I do experience it. Um, I think the last time I even dealt with Zany would probably be years ago. I mean, he just really doesn't mess with me too much like that. Um,
No, but everybody in our family knows that name. Everybody in our family knows exactly what I'm talking about, and everybody believes it because at least, except for my parents, they've never, except for the time my mom prayed over us in the hallway, um, all of them have experienced something with me at least once.
it was like mom a couple years ago. She said, I was talking to her because she got me into the confessionals. That's when I had an hour and 30-minute drive. I got into podcasts and was really listening to podcasts, and
Yeah.
would talk about them. And she would be like, do you believe what Dan says is true? Like, do you believe the stories? I'm like, yeah, I believe it 100%. I said, because I've been through things, not necessarily to the same extent, but I've seen things that most people don't see, you
Right.
know. I said, but you got to realize too, my parents didn't believe a lot of things we told them. The supernatural they believed in was God. There was no supernatural.
It was the good side.
God didn't make the supernatural, the evil. The only evil supernatural were demons. The demonic.
Right.
Well,
So for my parents, especially my mom, over the years, to be like, I actually, the more I listen to these and hear these people's stories, she goes, and I understand where Dan's coming from. She said, I hear more about it. So she said, I believe it. And I said, I've always believed it. I've never had any doubts about it. It's just, I've never had the experiences like that.
Yeah, man.
Nor do I want to, by any means. I don't, because the experiences I've had are enough.
Yeah. Well,
It's just,
if this is generational from the sounds of it, have you guys, and Dan, I might have asked you before, but I don't think I did. Have you kind of like prayed against or spoke against generational curses, like specifically to break curses off of your bloodline, off of your family?
yeah,
And
yeah. So actually, to be honest with you, I just found out. Me and my girlfriend just found out that she's pregnant.
amen.
And
Congratulations.
so, yeah, we're really excited. I haven't officially proposed yet, but we were talking about marriage before this happened, and so we were thinking May of 2026 is when we were probably going to get married, and then we just found out that she's pregnant, and so we're excited about that. But I know one of her biggest fears, and one of my parents' biggest fears is the attachment there, and if Zane's going to attach to our child, and actually not trying to upplay it or anything like that, but Sunday morning I had a no RG I had a meeting I had to go to at 7 in the morning, so I went, and Jada, my girlfriend, she had stayed the night with our daughter Leia, and they were sleeping, and I got changed and got ready and went to work, and I gave Jada a kiss and I said, hey, I'll see you later. And she actually texted me about an hour later, and she said that she had a dream about Zadie. And I was like, what do you mean? And she said, she's like, I was in the dream. She's like, I was laying in your bed, and he comes in your room and sits on the end of the bed. And then she said, and then when I started praying, he came at her in the dream.
Mm.
So it's definitely a fear, but I definitely have been praying quite a bit about because like I told Michael, and we've talked about this quite a bit. Do I like the experiences? No. But I wouldn't wish them on anybody else. I'm like, I would prefer it to happen to me than my kid, of course. So we definitely pray. I definitely pray. Jada and I have been praying tremendously about it. I know her parents are scared about it. So my parents are like worried about it. Um, but the thing about it, you also have to be very careful because depending on who you talk to about how to break generational curses can make it worse.
Yeah.
And so, like, there was a mutual friend of ours actually messaged me about a couple weeks ago, and she was saying, "Hey, I'm not wasn't trying to overstep, but I know this guy who was a satanic priest in a cult, and I kind of told him about because she read my novel. She loves my novel. She's read my novel honestly 6, 7 times now,
Wow.
which made me feel good, of course, because I wrote it, but." She said, I've read a lot about your supernatural experiences, and I know I've heard your stories on podcasts. So she said, I actually talked to this priest about it, and he was saying to break generational curses on their spectrum, that you have to go to where you're basically where the curse started and pray over that ground to kind of to break it. And I was like, well, I don't know where it started, and she was like, well. It sounds like it was with your birth mom. So, and I was like, well, my birth mom is dead. And then she's like, well, he's saying that you need to pray over her gravesite and denounce the demons. And I was like, well, she doesn't have a gravesite. She was cremated, we believe. Just all these things that he would say, well, this is what you should do, and none of those things I can do.
Right.
And even if that was the way to follow, if that's really how you break them and stuff, um, I wouldn't be able to do any of those things anyway. Because I don't know,
Right.
one, we don't know where our birth mom was going to be buried. If she was buried, we don't, she's been dead for 35 years.
How do you know it's the right way?
Yeah, and how do you know it's the
How
right
do you
way?
know you're not opening
And
something else up?
and so she was saying that this guy, this demonic priest who doesn't practice it anymore, was very interested in meeting me and talking to me. And I told her, I said, the only way I would do that is if he's a believer.
Right.
Like,
Amen. For sure.
I was like, because here's the thing is, my uncle always warned me because of our connection with the supernatural and the demonic presences that occult practices would love to suck us in, suck us in. And he always says you need to be on guard always. And so, like, I'm a big believer that I told my friend, our mutual friend, I said, I'm not going to sit down with this guy unless he's a believer because one, you have to protect yourself, but two, how do I know that he's teaching me the right things? To break a generational curse. How do I know that's not the devil, using this as a tool to suck me in or whatever?
Amen.
And so I told her, I said, I'm not going to meet with this man. I said, I appreciate it. I did ask her one thing. I said, the only question I would have for him, because that he was in that demonic side of the world, is if she's ever heard of Zany or if he's ever heard of Zany. I was like, because that's my only question. I said, I don't really want to know what he thinks about the curses or how to break it or anything like that because he's not of God or that I know of. I was like, but if maybe he's heard of Zany or maybe he knows about Zany and he could give some enlightenment or just some not really clarification, but just some more background with it.
Yeah.
And he had no idea. The only thing that he said, and he said, dude, it just seems like a very powerful being, especially if it could touch you. And I was like, well, I kind of already knew that. But, I've really been in prayer quite a bit. I pray over my room. I pray over the house. I pray every night before I go to sleep. I still read Psalms 91 because I'm very big in protection and praying. And I believe there is power in prayer. But I wish I could be like, yeah, man, I prayed over it. It's broken. It's gone. I don't have to deal with it no more. My kid's good. But
Yeah.
I told, where my faith is. I'm pray over my child, because God, do I go back to what God says? Yeah, I knew you. I knew you before you were formed in your mother's womb. So
Amen.
God, my child will be of God. I will dedicate my child to God. My child will know who Jesus is, and I will raise them in the church, and I will raise them in the faith, and I won't force my religion on them, but they will know who Jesus is.
Amen.
And I pray that they will accept that foundation and that they grow in the faith and they accept that from themselves. And I think that's the biggest thing you can do as a believer is you can't protect your kids forever, but you can sure as all get out teach them the right from wrong and what where your faith is and where your foundation is. And just like to go back, I still to this day, Mike and I talked, we really believe that even though those demons on the Ouija board told us that they wanted Lily and we told them no, we still think to this day that they sure as heck tried.
Yeah.
Because there was a time when Mike was living with me, Lily was fascinated with demonics.
Yeah.
Like I remember I came home from work and Mike was like, "Hey, Lily really wants to see a demon." I was like, "What?" He's like, "She's 6, 7 years old, 10. Her telling her dad that she wants to see a demon."
Yeah, man.
I wanted to play with the Ouija
She wanted to play with the Ouija
yeah.
board. She wanted to see demons and talk to them. And Mike had to sit down with her before I even got home. He's like, "No, you think this is a game, Lily?" So she's like, "Talk to your Uncle Dan." So talk to your Uncle Dan. He'll set you straight.
Yeah.
And so she was actually in the shower. I got home. She's in the shower. Mike sits down with me. He said, "Hey, I need you to talk to Lily about demons." I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Dude, she wants to see them. She thinks they're cool." And I was like, "Okay." She got out of the shower. We sat her down together, the two of us. And I set her straight. I said, "There's nothing cool about it." I said, "You want to be scared for the rest of your life?" I was like, when it comes to that, like I just put the fear into her. I was real with her.
Good.
But she's actually a Christian. She accepted Christ. Um, our grandparents got to lead her to Christ, so she has that foundation. And honestly, my mom even asked us one time because it is generational. Michael's kids never really been affected. They've never. I mean, they've never came. Besides the time at our house when they would say, "I'm not going to Uncle Dan's room. I'm not going up there."
Right.
Other than that, they've never been affected. They've never seen, never woke up, never.
No, like I said, there's stuff that happens
Mhm.
in my house, but it's not really pretend more. It's pretend more, I guess, when the kids aren't there.
It's
Which is okay. I'd rather it be when the kids aren't there than when my kids are there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm glad you said that you're going to dedicate your child. I'd go ahead and do it in the womb, dedicate that child to the Lord. I think that's so important for parents to do, man. I wish I would have known that, 20 plus years ago, but yeah, I think that's super important, dude.
absolutely.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
And so, like, have we broke this generational curse? No. And here's the thing is I'm a big believer that you stay consistent in prayer. God answers them. It may not be in the time frame that you want or the time or the answer that you want, or it's done the way that you want it to be, because it's not of us, it's of God. But I'm staying consistent in it. And, and I do believe that one reason why I go through these things is it allows me to put them into my stories.
Yeah.
To help people who need it and to be a witness and to be like, hey, the devil attacks me, flesh and blood, he attacks me. It's not just a supernatural, spiritual battle. It's physical sometimes. But at the end of the day, my faith is still where my faith is. I know where my faith is. If I were to die tomorrow or tonight, I know where I'm going.
Yeah.
And so where my faith is and my foundation to put into stories to help reach people, do I think that this is going to be a lifelong curse? No. I think it's going to be to a point where God's going to allow it to continue to happen so I can put it into stories and reach people. And then one day God's going to take it.
Amen.
I want it to be tomorrow? Absolutely. Do I pray that it's tomorrow? Absolutely. But it could be 5 years from now.
Yeah.
But it's in his timing, because in my firm belief, I believe the only way you could really break a foundational curse or a blood curse is through Jesus Christ, because he is the blood and the salvation that saves us and puts his protection around us. And when I pray that Jesus' blood over my room or over the foundation, because I know that there's power in the blood. And when you have a blood curse, my blood's tainted. I know that, but Jesus isn't. So that's what my faith is, and God will take away this curse, this blood curse, when in His time. And unfortunately, for me specifically, that's not that time yet.
Yeah.
But stay diligent in prayer and pray over it.
Amen. That's right. That's right. All things in God's time. You put it up to Him. You just be obedient to Him, man, and that's all we can do, right?
Absolutely. Amen.
But look, your book, I mentioned it in the intro, but I would like for you to, to hit your book real quick, or real slow. I don't care, but tell people about your book and where they can find it. And yeah,
Yeah,
man,
absolutely.
we'll wrap
So
up.
I have a copy too because I didn't know that you still had the copy that you have bought. But it is called The Ringler, a letter from home, and my name is Daniel Swarthout. You could find it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all over like that. Uh, this book, and I'll be real with you guys. This book is more than just a story to me. This is my life. There's about four main characters. Tatum is the one you really learn about first. That's based off of me and my experiences. Malik, Leo, and Loman. Leo is really based off of Mike. His personality, his persona is in that character. Some of the things that Leo does in the book, Mike's never done personally, but some of the stuff that Leo's experienced, Michael has experienced. So every experience that you see in this book or you read in this book is real, has happened to somebody that I've known or myself. But it's about four best friends who are really brothers. They were adopted by a loving family because they grew up together with no home. And this family took them in, and they live in a town called Auburn Falls. Later, when they get on in their life, Tatum falls in love with a young lady named Brooklyn, and she ends up dying in an accident. And so, because of her death, Tatum's like, I'm out. He leaves the falls, moves to Denver, Colorado, lives there for a couple years, and tries to start a new life. Creates his own business, does his own thing, and one day he gets a letter. That's why it's called a letter from home, because he actually gets a letter in the mail, and it's addressed to him. It's from his the old address in Auburn Falls, and it's in Brooklyn's handwriting. And there's a riddle inside of the letter, and also her ring, and it's the ring that he saw her get buried with. And so, of course, it entices him to go back to the falls, which is exactly what the killer in the name of the book, and the killer's name of this book is named Zany. Obviously, now you know why. But Zany, that's what he wanted, was him go back to the falls, and it's a wild ride, man. I love this book. I'm very proud of it. It's been out for a year now, since December of 2023. I'm actually almost, pretty far into book number two. My goal is to get book two out this year. And so it's just, the Lord's blessed me with able to tell stories like this. And that's what I use. This is my witness. This is what I use to spread the gospel and to talk about the stuff that I've experienced.
Amen.
So if you find it in your heart to want to purchase it, please feel free to do so. It's the goal. My dream is to write full time one day, and this is the footing for it. So I'm blessed, and I'm using my skills that God gave me to share my witness.
Amen. Amen. And I absolutely love, and I told you that too in text. Like, I love the way you've written it, from the perspectives, and it goes from one character to the next. And then it's just like, man, it's awesome. It's awesome. I ain't gonna lie, I haven't made it all the way through because my wife says I have ADD and I can't finish anything I start. But I'm over 100 pages in it. I'm close to halfway through it, and then I got distracted. I'm sure somebody, with the book, or I'll tell you what happened. I read the Bible through all the way through last year, and I sat down everything else, and I read
Good
it
for
all the
you.
way through. And but I'm gonna finish it.
Well, I'm not gonna compare my book to the Bible. I mean, the Bible beats my book. But I do appreciate it, man. I'm anxious to hear what you think at the end of it. But
Yeah, bro. I love it.
but I will tell people, book two leads off right with book one ends. Like, they just go right into each other. So, um, my goal one day is I would love to see it become a TV series or even a movie. I think that'd be so cool.
Yeah.
But
It reads like a movie.
it's a passion that God put on my heart.
Yeah. It absolutely, it reads like a movie. If people have any kind of imagination whatsoever, you're seeing these characters, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's great, dude. Absolutely love it. And I wouldn't just say that. I'll be like, yeah, you wrote a book. I'll be honest.
Yeah,
But it's great, man. I absolutely love it.
I appreciate that.
Oh man. Look, Dan, Mike, I appreciate you guys for coming on tonight. I have like 32 text messages. I'm gonna have to call my pastor too. So I'm gonna have to hop off here for the night. But
Yeah.
I've thoroughly enjoyed this. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to enjoy your negative experiences. You know what I mean?
Oh, you good, bro.
No, you're good.
You know what I'm saying, man? I've enjoyed the conversation, getting to know you, Mike. Dan, it's great catching up, man. Hopefully we won't take so long, bring you on again. And both of you we'll hit some more stuff or just talk about theories or whatever you want to talk about. But I've absolutely loved this conversation tonight, man. I appreciate you guys for taking the time for me.
Thank you for having us. We really enjoyed it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And just like you said, if your audience wants us back, or if you just want us back just to kick it and talk about stuff, we're down. We love talking. We love just socializing, and we would be honored to. Yeah, absolutely, we'd be honored to do that with you. So
awesome. Yeah, because I have a feeling there's going to be emails about. there were emails last time. There's going to be emails this time. So people are going to want to have questions for you or whatever. So if you guys are open for it.
Absolutely. You have my number. Call me, text me, email it to me. I don't care, whatever. I'm open to that. That's why we do it.
Sweet, man. Hey, well, look, you guys stay prayed up. Have a good night. God bless you both and your families.
Thank you, sir.
You too. Stay blessed, bro. Thank you.
Night.
Night.